County Planning Commission, and I'll begin with a few introductory comments. As a courtesy to everyone here tonight, please make sure that you got your cell phones silenced, turned off. Also, any final action taken on a conditional use permit tonight will take effect 5 working days following this meeting unless a written appeal is submitted to the Planning Commission's decision, and that should be submitted to the Planning Office by Tuesday, May 26th at 5 p.m. In the event of an appeal, the decision will be referred to the County Commission for a hearing, and that would take place on Tuesday, June 16th at or after 9 a.m. And those meetings of the County Commission take place in the same room. At this time, the Planning Commission will consider items on the consent agenda. The minutes from the April 27th meeting are included in the consent agenda. Are there any objections from the Planning Commission members to any items on this consent agenda?
There was only one that was kind of questionable, and that was number 9, the 6,000 square feet facility.
You want to move it?
Let's move it.
Okay, so that's going to go to the regular agenda. I have an additional stipulation I'd like to put on item 10, and I think I need to do that, moving that to the regular agenda. Yes. I have a question for staff, if I can, on item number 5, which is the Capel. There were 2 neighbors that could potentially submit a waiver. Did they? You know?
Not at this time, but I understand that the petitioner is planning on getting those.
Then I'd like to move items 4 and 5 to the regular agenda.
4
and 5. I think they're related. We ought to consider the other ones. So that leaves on the consent agenda so far what hasn't been moved would be items 2, or well, the approval of minutes, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8. Any objections? Any other concerns from the commission members? Next, I'm going to read the items, and if there's anyone in the audience that would like them moved from the consent agenda to the regular agenda, and at that point then, if they're on the regular agenda, there'll be an opportunity for testimony and comments. If you'd like to move it to the regular agenda when I read it, please raise your hand and we'll move it to the regular agenda.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Item 8 is on the regular agenda. Could you skip that one?
Oh, it is? Okay. Item 8's on the regular agenda. So the items that are on the consent agenda, raise your hand if you've got objections to our approval of the minutes. The next item is a conditional use permit 15-26 to allow a second dwelling, and that would be located on property that's 1 mile northeast of Hartford. Anyone here object to that item on the consent? Item number 3 is a conditional use permit 15-27 to exceed 1,200 square feet of total accessory building. They're requesting 1620, and that's on property at 46705 Sage Street, approximately 2 miles west of Sioux Falls. The next item on the consent agenda was item number 6, which is conditional use permit 15-30 to allow a mini storage building on property located at 47165 250th Street, and that's approximately 3.5 miles west of Baltic. Item 7 is a conditional use permit 15-31 to allow the transfer of 3 building eligibilities, and that's located approximately 1 mile east of Sioux Falls. That's the consent agenda. No objections, so do I have a motion?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Then we need a motion to approve the regular agenda. Let's see if I've got this right. That would be items number 2, 4, 5, 8, 9, and 10.
My motion.
Motion second. Anyone? Okay. Motion and second to approve the regular agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 4 in this process that we're going to follow here is we're going to have the hearing procedure where the staff will come up, provide some comments about the item, read their staff report, then we'll ask the applicant to step forward. When you come to the podium, please state your name and address for the record. After the applicant is presented, then we'll open it up to the floor for anyone else that has comments. So, go ahead.
All right. Kevin Hookman, Planning Department. This is a conditional use permit to allow a single-family dwelling on the parcel. The parcel is currently located approximately 3 miles north of Brandon and a half mile west of South Dakota Highway 11. The petitioner would like to build a dwelling unit on this location. Approximately right there along the driveway. The creek does wind through the property, but this is nowhere near the floodplain. And there is a small CAFO just to the south west of the location. The petitioner is also bringing forward in the next agenda item a CAFO at the same location. For this location, to build a dwelling unit, the right to farm covenant notice would help with developing property in the area so that future development will not be impeded. The effect on development also will not hurt future development based on new dwellings being added to the area, since the conditional use dwelling is there. Building eligibility is located on this property. No added utilities will be necessary for this building other than what the petitioner will have to put in on his own land. The proposed conditional use permit will have no or little effect on health, safety, or general welfare of the public in this dwelling unit. So staff finds this conditional use permit request consistent with density zoning and the comprehensive plan. So staff recommends approval for conditional use permit number 1528 with the following conditions: that a right to farm notice covenant shall be placed on the deed prior to the issuance of the building permit of a single family dwelling. So just some pictures of the area. This is the driveway, kind of looking towards the dwelling area, which it was suggested that the dwelling would go somewhere along this driveway. Looking east towards the nearest next dwelling along the road. And there's the existing CAFO kind of the southwest. So.
Questions for Kevin? I guess I have one. If it wouldn't be for the fact that we're going to be looking at a application for a CAFO on this same property, would we be adding a building eligibility?
On this parcel, I believe there's 3 eligibilities that are allowed on this parcel, except for they're all listed under conditional use. So because of the shape of the property is what I'm guessing. So he has to place a dwelling unit somewhere and buy through this process. So this is where he wanted to place it.
Okay, so I'm confused. There is an existing building eligibility, and all we're doing is placing it at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
Because there either is available or through conditional use. But most of the time, this conditional use is placed on either property that's landlocked, such as if this was in this quarter section, would normally not have this road through here. So that might be the reason why it's conditional use, to place that building eligibility in that section, or it's going to be something where the parcel was misshapen, or it was like 60 acres and you didn't know where to put it, so there's conditional use placed on it instead of just an eligible.
So I'm confused and obviously also ignorant after having been on the commission for a while. So am I to understand then that we've got this 40-acre rule, and if we looked at all of the various sections, there'd be these housing eligibilities on them, but when you get to some parcels like this, there's an eligibility, it's just not allowed? I mean,
it's only allowed through a conditional use permit, which means that you have to show where you're going to put that in and get the permission through a conditional use permit. And I can't fully explain why they set it up that way. I think Kevin, did a good job of supposing what they looked at 30 years ago in 1988 when they started this process. But there are 3 eligibilities there.
So we're not creating
We're
an
not creating.
we're using one.
We're assigning
The wording
one.
had me thinking that we were creating one, and
I think we're just basically assigning which quarter section it's going to go into.
Okay.
That's maybe a better way of thinking of it.
much more at ease.
There's 3 there. And if he wants to, someday we may have to go through this again on the same parcel because the other 2, as I understand it, are also through a conditional use permit.
Okay. Thank you for that. I wouldn't say I'm educated, but I'm more informed. Okay. Is the applicant here, and could you step forward and tell us a little bit about what you're doing and related to this item, and you're going to get plenty of time talking a little bit on that cable.
Wyatt Sunwell, 1600 East Cedar Street, Brandon, South Dakota. And I'm applying for conditional use permit to place a shop for my farming operation with an apartment in it, in the building, to make this the center of my farming operation. I currently farm that quarter that's outlined there,
Okay.
where the building would go. And it'd be a 60 by 70 mortar shed with 20 by 40 2-story apartment inside of it.
Okay. Great. Any questions for the applicant?
I have a comment, not that.
Okay. Did you want to do
Well,
it
my
now?
comment is, we ran into this west of town where they put up a building in the middle of bare land, and it's got a residence in it, and we call it a residence. But in reality, it's a storage shed, machine shed. And it just seems to me that shouldn't be allowed. Although in this case, he is using an eligibility, which makes it a little bit more palatable.
Yeah.
The other place was used in eligibility too.
It's just, they weren't farming or nothing. It's a storage building with a little 300 square foot apartment in the corner of it. That's a little different. This guy's actually farming.
I agree, but we don't regulate
I know we don't.
what size and what you make your house out of.
Nor is this the item, so. Anything else for the applicant?
You're safe, okay. You're
Thanks. If he's turned red, it didn't have to do it. Is there anyone else in the audience that'd like to come forward and speak to this item?
Yes, I would.
Please.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. Are there more chairs available? There's a couple over there, and are there any in the hallway, maybe?
I'm not aware, but we do have a couple up front. There's,
We could take
Another one in
those
the front
from
row?
behind the,
we can swipe a couple of these that didn't get used by Del Rapids.
if I may, we lost our overflow room because the state's turning needed more offices, and so we're converting that overflow space to office space for more prosecutors.
We're doing expense. We just got to cut down on that crime so we don't need as many of them.
But doing crime and we can keep taxes down.
All right, I'll do my part.
Is the sound system on?
It is on, but these are not very responsive.
Yeah, I can barely hear.
Yep, I think we should all try to make an effort to use the mics.
Sorry, please state your name and
All
address.
right, John Weir.
Yes, John.
48255, 256th Street, Garrettson. Across the road of the subject property here is my grandfather's operation, in which him and my grandmother own the land. I farm with my grandfather, so that's our operation across the road. I am fine with the building and everything. We put temporary cattle yards in the spring across the road, and I'm fine with this. It's just that I don't want, after it's up, to say you can't have this cattle yard. I just wanted to bring that to attention, that after it's up, my operation can't continue to do what it's doing. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak to this item? I'll close the floor, commissioners. Thoughts? Motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would just point out that we do have the Freedom to Farm covenant, and so, existing and future farming activity should be understood to be normal in that area for anyone that chooses to reside in the apartment. I'll make a motion to approve this.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
And if I may, Commissioner Barth, the clarification, it's not really a covenant, it's a notification. So the person building is well aware that he's in an ag area, right? So and that rides with the property, so I think the next future buyer is going to be made aware of the fact that they'd be buying in a ag area as well. So we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The motion to approve is carried. So we move on to item number 5. And Kevin, you're back up.
Kevin Hookman, County Planning Department. So item number 5, 1529 is allow Class C cap CAFO on the property that we just discussed before, located 3 miles north of Brandon and a half mile west of Highway 11. The property is composed in mostly cropland along with pasture land as it meanders through the creek, and the creek meanders through. Nearby there is the watershed protection area. However, the proposed CAFO is not located in the watershed protection area. The proposed facility will be 499 animal units, which will be well under the threshold required for a state permit. The petitioner is planning on expanding to some degree in the future and would like to obtain a state permit in the future. So he is seeking a certificate of compliance with the state DNR, which is similar as to the permit, but not quite to the full extent. The conditional use process requires several applicable requirements to be part of the process. First, the operator shall maintain inspection records of all manure and nutrient management waste facilities, and records shall be stored at the county on an annual basis. Manure management plan has been submitted, and he does show that he has enough acreage to support the nutrients that are produced by the facility. The facility was noted to be primarily for the raising of bottle feed calves that are counted as one animal unit. The petitioner has submitted a site plan of 60 by 200 foot building. I think I have a picture of it. I may not. But it would be just a general pole shed type building for the calf barn. In the petition, he also, in the site plan, he notes grove of trees located on the west and north part of the property. And on the site plan, somewhere between either north or the south, depending on the grade, the manure will also be stored for the site plan. The petitioner has also submitted geotechnical boring report that does indicate that the test went 51 feet deep and found that there was saturated water at 39 feet deep. A nutrient management plan was submitted, but this technical boring does meet the county requirements for enough ground before water is struck. The manure will be dried and stored in a concrete containment either located on the north or south of the property with a minimum of 270 days of storage capacity. What else for the site plan? The conditional use permit criteria for the facility. The primary use of the property is surrounding areas of the operation is agricultural farmsteads and cropland. There are several dwelling units in the area and acreages. The property is required to either meet setback requirement of this rate at 499 animal units of 1,100 feet from dwelling, churches, schools, and businesses. The petitioner has shown documentation showing 1,000 feet from the nearest dwelling unit, which would be this. You can kind of see these circles. Here's the site. There would be the dwelling unit and the circles around them. But it does not show the 100 feet extra. The setbacks that I have presented on this map are setbacks from the whole quarter section of land, which does encompass those two properties on the south, which would be located here and here. But without the signed waiver, the property owner or the petitioner will be required to present new technology management practices and so on to substantiate a reduction in minimum separation requirements. The effect on normally and ordered development of the surrounding area. The construction and operation will have little effect on the surrounding agricultural production lands. It may even be beneficial to nearby agricultural production because of the manure. The petitioner owns and operates enough cropland for the manure. Since the proposal would result in a new facility, there is potential for buyers and developers to have an effect on future development of rural single-family dwellings. The comprehensive plan does also repeatedly warn against residential development inhibiting productivity of agriculture within the county. The utilities and access from the road. The facility is located a half-mile from South Dakota Highway 11, which places within close proximity to the highway. The facility will operate in similar fashion to other farm-type operations in the area. They also have rural water connected to the facility. The off-street parking, the site is big enough to support all off-street parking and maneuvering. Measurements are taking control offensive odors, fumes, dust, noise, vibration. Since this is a proposal of a new facility, there are some possibilities for creating nuisance and problems. Of the problems, CAFOs often produce odor, and planting of shelter belts will significantly help the odor control along the incorporating manure well applied to the cropland, as well as incorporating the manure. It is recognized in no case that odor can be completely eliminated from an operation like this. The petitioner has also stated fly control and rendering will be a regular part of operations. In the health, safety, general welfare of the public, the proposed new CAFO will unlikely cause significant increase in public health, safety, or welfare concerns because of the low density of dwelling units in the facility. The proposed calf feeding operation will have to comply with conditions in this permit and the conditions within the ordinance, Minnehaha County ordinance. The CAFO is located firmly within the commercial agricultural area of 1998 Comprehensive Development Plan, which describes the area to be intended to be preserved, farm-related use such as activities can freely operate without the need to impose restrictions on competing uses. One of the policies in this designated area is also to regulate concentrated animal feed operations and processing to protect the environmental equality and minimize conflicts within human activities. With all this being said, staff finds the proposed CAFO expansion appropriate use in the commercial agricultural area of the comprehensive plan and recommends approval with the following conditions. The facility shall be limited to 499 animal units in size. Copies of the nutrient management plans shall be approved and filed with Minnehaha County Planning Department on an annual basis. Shelter belt trees shall be planted as proposed on the site plan. In addition, shelter belt trees shall be placed in appropriate locations around the manure containment facility. Any dead trees shall be replaced within one growing season. The shelter belt trees shall be planted utilizing the minimum Minnehaha County Conservation District standards. An address sign must be purchased in the planning department and placed in the driveway of the facility. The manure storage facility must be in conformance with South Dakota Department of Environmental and Natural Resources design standards for any newly constructed waste containment facility. A registered professional engineer shall certify the plan specifications and construction of the facility. The facility shall conform to the submitted site plans. Any minor changes may be approved by the staff and Minnehaha County Planning Department. Major changes will require an amendment to this permit in public hearing. A rendering surface must be used to pick up and remove dead animals from the property. The property shall maintain fly control and not become a nuisance for neighbors. A building permit is required for all structures prior to construction. The Planning and Zoning Department reserves the right to enter and inspect the dairy CAFO, this CAFO at any time after proper notice to the owner. Ensure the property is full compliance with conditional use permit conditions and approval of Minnehaha County ordinance. Any questions? I got some pictures if you'd like to see them. Similar to the last one, this is the driveway. This would be the CAFO location, looking off to the northeast, or northwest, northeast down towards the creek. There would be the eastern dwelling unit farm or area. There would be the southwest farmstead, looking down the road.
Kevin, are you, since we didn't get the waivers from the two properties within the required setback, we can go ahead and provided that the applicant has provided a documented plan showing new technologies or practices that are going to be employed to reduce the nuisances created by this CAFO. To your knowledge, what are those, or have any been presented?
To my knowledge, the applicant is able to get the waivers in this case.
But we don't have them yet.
But we just don't have them yet. He said once this is approved, he will be willing to get the waivers, and that can be added to the conditions if need be.
Okay.
But it's already part of the ordinance, so.
Right. I just hate to approve something unless I hear about those practices or have a waiver, one or the other.
Yep.
So, okay, is the applicant here? Would you like to come forward and tell us about what you're doing?
Wyatt Sunwold, 1600 East Cedar Street, Brandon, South Dakota. This application is for a 499 annual unit CAFO.
We can't hear.
Tap the microphone. Okay, just speak closer to it or point it right at your mouth there.
Again, this application is for a 60 by 200 pole shed that would be used as a CAFO for a herd of bottle calves, Holstein bottle calves that I would raise to 200 to 300 pounds before I'd sell them. It's all going to be a dry pack manure. And I've been working with Eisenbrower and Associates, their engineers out of Yankton, to work up plans and everything that we've come up with so far. And upon approval, we'll continue with that. There's a nutrient manure management plan already in place for it. And also, as stated before, upon approval, I will get a certificate of compliance to the state DNR. And basically what that is it's getting approved for 1,000 head plus feedlot. And I never have any intention of running over that amount of numbers, but what it's doing is making sure everything is looked at and taken care of properly, so I can show my neighbors and myself that I'm taking care of my ground and looking out for their ground. And all that certificate of compliance is they go through, check it off, make sure the building is up to code and everything in the feedlot, and I just don't have to report to the state as in much detail yearly as what larger operations do at a state permit.
Yeah, that's actually a positive step for you, because that's not a requirement of you until you go over 1,000 units, but you're going to go through the process. They don't give you the official stamp of approval, but they're giving you a certificate that says you met the requirements. Is that
right? Correct. Yep.
Thanks.
Exactly.
Go ahead. Anything else?
Not, I guess, too much. I mean, chose a pole shed for this because if I do ever decide to get out of calves, I can use it as a machine storage shed or something similar to that. It wouldn't become a nuisance, I guess, to any neighbors or anything like that. So.
Questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, are you currently raising calves? Wyatt?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so basically you're taking these calves out of hutches and putting them in the building?
Yep.
So that's a major improvement right there from an environmental standpoint.
How many are you raising in these hutches right now?
Right now I have 300 of them.
Okay.
So I stay around that number and they're gone. When I bring them in, it's usually about 9 weeks and then they're gone. So it's a quick turnaround time.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to this item?
Yes, I would.
Please come forward, state your name and address, and go ahead.
I usually don't have to use a microphone. I usually speak loud enough. But my name is Darla Nordstrom. I live at 11623 North Hacienda Drive in Sun City, Arizona. The property in question is adjacent to the 70-plus acres that I own, which the property that Wyatt is currently trying to build this CAFO, is that what you call it?
Right.
on that land originally belonged to my family. My concern is that if I would decide in the future that I would want to sell the land that I have, and my understanding is that a developer could come in and they could build more houses than the two that it's limited to at this particular time. I don't know if that's correct or not. That was just an understanding that a developer has different privileges and availabilities.
Maybe I can help you on that, and
Okay.
staff fix me up if I'm wrong here. So you, I don't know about your particular property specifically, but typically, unless there was something platted prior to decades ago that would give you more housing eligibilities, the ordinance was changed in 1988. Yeah, and at that point, we gave one housing eligibility every 40 acres. Now, it's possible that, since you only have 70, that maybe one of those eligibilities is in that extra 30, but you probably only have one housing eligibility. To build additional houses, whether you're a developer or the Pope, you've got to come in here and get permission. And that's usually frowned upon because you're not anywhere near any other residential. So you probably have one, at best two housing eligibilities.
Okay. Yeah, I talked with Planning and Zoning this afternoon, and I was under the impression that at this particular time there was only two.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate the clarification that this would not be something that a developer could come in and do something with.
Yeah.
My concern is the fact that if I would decide to build something on this property, the property lines are just like this. They're right adjacent to each other, and I would have to deal with, as Wyatt says now, we're only going to deal with 499 head of cattle. But there's been several times this little underlying mention of the fact that it could go up to 1,000. I myself personally would not want to live next to a farming situation. Is it called capo again?
Right.
I'm sorry. I would not want to live next to that. I would not even want to be within a half a mile of it, because I've grown up in a farming community. This was my home. I know exactly what the odors are like, and no matter how hard you try, you cannot contain it. And if for some reason one of my relatives, my children or something like that, would want to come back and build a home on the old part of the old farmstead, I'm just totally against the idea of the fact that this is going to be built there next to property that I own. And is it going to affect the sale of it if I decide that I'm going to sell it as farmland, that this is going to be built there? I just really don't care for the idea of having it. I have no idea how close he's planning on building this to the property line. And, you know, that's another issue is, you know, how much of the proximity of the land right next to it is this capo going to be built? And I'm just totally against that part of it. If he wants to build a place to live, that's fine. But I just really feel that this is something that I can't support in any way. And that's my feelings on it. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Nordstrom? Thank you. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak to this item? Yes, please come forward.
I'm Jeff Sorensen, and we live 48186 257th Street, Garrettson. We're about a third of a mile north and east, right across. I don't, and my wife, we don't object to normal farm things. In fact, I have a few cattle of our own. We run 15 head on 50 acres there. We understand that. But this is a feedlot, 1,000 head feedlot, and that's a very different thing. And we understood signing on to normal farming operations in the area, but we think this permitting process is because this is not a normal farming thing. This is a 1,000 head feedlot. And you know, he said 500, but he was already acknowledged he's going to apply to the state for more. Several concerns. One is real estate values. There are a dozen homes in the proximity of what he's projecting, and there's more eligibilities nearby. As soon as this comes up, our valuations are going to drop $50,000. And there's a 1,000-head feedlot right across the road. And I mean, my question is can a dozen of us appeal for a valuation decrease when that happens? Or, I mean, that's a concern, real estate values. And what's going on. Location, I'm wondering, does the permit condition that? The map that we got shows the quarter section, and all that's excluded is his aunt's home there. So is it said on the condition exactly where this needs to be and precisely where? Most of this quarter section is in the floodplain. It was all underwater last summer. The higher part where he's talking about isn't, but the rest of it and most of the farmland there is in floodplain. Us being on the north side, our preference would be if it's going to be there, it's as far north as possible. Or south, I'm sorry, up next to the road. There are 9 homes in the half section just immediately to the north of this. They're all going to be impacted by south winds every hot summer day on this thing. I'm wondering about the conditions that go there. Does it say the cattle have to be confined inside, or is he free if he wants to expand in the future to more cattle and bigger cattle, or put a feedlot outside? Is that stipulated in the conditions of the permit? Odor will be a concern for us. What's the plan for that? He'll be applying that to land that's just like right across the road from us, from the 9 of us that are along that section to the north. And where we sit, the southwest winds in the summer, when he puts that on, it's going to be just like right there. Question about the manure plan as well. Are there conditions for how many acres are required per head for the manure application? And does that land have to not be in the floodplain? Or can he apply the manure and it goes underwater and goes down the Big Sioux? Because that's what will happen on most of that farmland if he is allowed to apply it on what's on the floodplain. And then I guess a question too is, what's the process for appeal? I mean, I went online and looked, and it says something about needing 60% of adjacent landowners, but we don't know who or all that is included in that. And so that would be helpful for us.
Any questions for Mr. Sorensen? Thank you. Kevin, perhaps you could come up and respond to a couple things here. Maybe you'd rather have the applicant on the location, but do you have something that you can show folks on the overhead about the location? Maybe a little bit about CAFO requirements and the fact that the animal units could be outside. And I think just even the understanding, because he asked about larger animals. For the ladies, the CAFO is a confined animal feeding operation, and the number of animal units is based on a formula that I'll ask Kevin maybe to explain, and then the guidelines for manure application, the appeal process. So there's a lot of things there. But
well, for the animal units, since that's condition number 1, the facility shall be limited to 499 animal units. Animal units are a way to calculate all types of animals in a similar manner, so that way, based on the amount of manure that type of animal creates, the amount of nutrients. So one chicken is worth less than a cow, but so 499 animal units will get a lot more chickens than cows. That's what I mean. In this case, he is going to be placing dairy calves on the property, and a calf is worth 1 animal unit. So 499 animal units will allow 499 dairy calves. It would be the same as if you were producing any sort of beef cattle. So it could get larger because a calf is, as he mentioned, 200 to 300 pounds, but it's roughly up to 1,000 pounds for an animal unit. It's a little bit more if it becomes dairy, that sort of thing, but it'd be 499 cattle is basically what that means. It is what that means. I heard basically. That is what it means. 499 beef cattle. That is what it means. What was the other questions? The site plan. One of the conditions is that let's see. The facility, number 7, the facility shall conform to submitted site plans, which means the facility has to locate in this location, which is outside of the floodplain, and is outside of the watershed protection area, and it has to locate within that area. Minor changes, say if he decides that the building needs to go east and west instead of north and south because it works better with this facility, that we can adjust in the house. But if he wants to move the building entirely, that becomes something we have to reapply for this conditional use permit. What other?
Animals outside?
Animals outside. A CAFO is defined by the confinement of animals. It does not necessarily mean that the animals have to be inside or outside. So he could put, say, half of his animals outside in a confined pen and feed them out there, or he could have them inside underneath the roof. That is not defined in this CAFO permit.
Guidelines for manure application?
Manure application, he's required to place it per the nutrient needs of the field rather than the amount of manure per acre, or amount of animals per acre. So say that the field needs so many pounds of nitrogen or so many pounds of the nutrient that it needs, so they calculate how much nitrogen is in that manure and they put it on the ground at that rate. So that would be basic. So he has enough ground to put the amount of nitrogen produced from his cows onto the ground that he owns.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but item number 2 speaks to a nutrient management plan that's submitted each year and updated related to how they will be spreading those, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And he has to meet certain setbacks within that nutrient management, setbacks from the river, setbacks from waterways, which vary depending on the type of river or waterway, and how he incorporates it. If he tills it in, he can get it closer because it doesn't run off as fast. If he puts it on top, he has to stay further away because it runs off faster.
And the appeal process was there.
And then the appeal process. Any aggrieved person can appeal by submitting a written appeal letter to the planning department, and within 5 working days. And in this case, it's going to be Tuesday at 5 o'clock. That's Tuesday, May 26th at 5 o'clock. So anybody in the audience can do that.
It's any one. I think the gentleman was asking about 60% of the neighbors. And that kind of
Yep,
thing.
any one. You only need one person to appeal, and it's just a written notice. So a letter in the mail with a signature on it, an email, or something written down and received to our office.
Thank you, Kevin. For those clarifications.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just comment that the appeal process, should you be disappointed with the result at the next level, you can go to circuit court and then on to the Supreme Court.
Thank you for that. Anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to this item?
I'd like to add one more thing.
Sure. Forward.
Wyatt Sunwold again. I just like to point out that to both people who protested, I have no problem against it whatsoever. You're voicing your opinions, and that is perfectly fine with me. There is currently a CAFO directly to the south of me that is outdoors, and then there's also directly one to the northwest, both outdoors also, where you can see the runoff actually happen every spring down to the local creek. And then there's also a hog confinement directly to the east of me along Highway 11, which is in the floodplain itself. And also, I'm just pointing out, having this cattle inside is better for the cattle, better for the environment, and better for everyone's land because manure will not be running off. That's all I have to add.
Sure. I do have a, go ahead, yes, please.
Where are your hutches currently?
Currently, I have a custom feeder for me that's out of Steen, Minnesota. He's currently bottle feeding for me.
Okay. One more question. So, I have to be honest with you, I'm a little concerned from a procedural standpoint more than anything else. You're indicating that you're going to be able to get these waivers for the setback.
Yep.
But, you know, the only way, I guess, and as chairman, I'm not going to get the vote, okay, unless it somehow turns into a tie. But these guys are going to hear this anyhow, so I can tell you, no, we're going to give you an answer to rebut. Is that if it was a stipulation that you have those two waivers, or that you submit something that would indicate best practices to reduce the nuisances of odor and those types of things. And since you didn't submit something and we don't have those waivers, I would have a hard time voting for it unless that was added as a stipulation that those waivers come in or you have that plan. So you seem real confident that you're going to get those.
Yeah, and I apologize for that.
Yeah.
It's been a really busy spring trying to get
Sure.
crops in. We finally got some time to get caught up this past week with rain, but just didn't get caught up that far. But no, I can definitely have those in it for sure. So,
anything else that you're doing that you know we've seen, and I see that one of the stipulations is a grove and those types of things. I wouldn't call those new or unusual types of approaches for reducing the setback. So anything else, new practices that you're deploying to reduce odors or things that we should be aware of?
well, order management at any level is very complicated and hard to obtain. Basically, it just comes down to designing your storage plan correctly with your engineers, having them set it up right that have experience doing so. And also timely applications as soon as you can get it applied and get it worked in is going to cut your odor down immensely. And also these calves, since they're so little, they do not produce that much manure. I mean, there is smell there with any manure, but it's mainly all going to be corn stalks or straw that is mixed in there. There is going to be smell, yes, but doing the best of management practices and just, you know, the old implementation of trees and also managing it by applying it as soon as possible.
Thank you. Anything else for the One last try for any. Thank you for in the audience. Anyone else that would like to speak? Yes, ma'am. One more. Anything that's new and different, please come forward. Come forward to the microphone, please. We've got to get it on the board.
Who is it that, or is there an agency or somebody that actually verifies that it is only calves, that it doesn't become a larger animal that's being raised in there? Is there any type of agency that goes out and checks on it and makes sure that they are actually raising calves and they're not raising larger animals, or maybe they turned into raising beef cattle that are going to be sold as far for butchering and that type of thing?
I get the gist of your question. Frankly, they can have, you know, I don't know whether it's 800 chickens or whatever based when we're done. So it can change because it's an animal unit, as Kevin was explaining, is an animal unit. But, so that they don't go over the $4.99, what this application is for. Maybe staff could explain.
Well, I think that
Inspection process.
condition number 11 addresses that, ma'am, that we have the right to enter the property. And to answer your question, it's the planning and zoning department that goes out and would verify that. If we receive a complaint or have a suspicion that they're not abiding by the conditions of approval, then we can go out and inspect the property after giving the applicant like a notice, a day notice that we're coming out.
Okay, were those conditions sent out
To the applicant and
to the people
Kevin,
that are in the proximity of it?
we presented them tonight at the meeting.
Okay.
And Kevin read those. Those were the conditions that Kevin read. And you can, I'll be glad to give these to you. If you want a copy of them, we can give you a copy of the conditions.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just to clarify on the larger animals,
Yeah.
a dairy cow is 1.4 animal units, and so as long as the total was under 500. Meanwhile, 100 chickens is an animal unit, so that could be 50,000 chickens. They're kind of a scarce commodity right now.
And more so. All right. I'm going to close the floor and turn to the commission for action.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with your concern about getting those waivers, and I'm wondering what, if we were to add that to the conditions, perhaps Kevin or Scott could recommend language to use for that. But I would like to make sure those are in hand before we suddenly have this into existence.
How close is the closest house?
It's questionable depending on where you're setting that boundary. As I stated, right here you can see that it's 1,000 feet from those circles there.
Which is the closest house that went across the road?
So this one would, they're both about the same. And so these circles are 1,000 feet from the closest houses, and then this would be 1,000 feet from here. This one, if you add 100 feet, clearly is outside of that boundary. These two come very close into this kind of quasi, if you were to take out a tape measure and go out there and measure it, I think you would find that they would be outside of the setbacks. But from the tools that we've been using, it's kind of hard to tell. That's kind of where, like I said, it's a quasi.
Okay, the reason I ask that is our setbacks are not set in stone, they are criteria. And he's putting in a building in which the animals are going to be confined, they're not outside, and that is different, and it allows, I think, for the exception. It should not have, I would still want to get it, but I wouldn't put that as a condition.
But I don't think the requirement is that they are confined, so you're going to make that a condition? Inside the building?
Based on what he's shown us.
Yeah, but they could be in a outdoor lot and still be a CAFO and not be in a building, and then he hasn't shown any new best practices.
I still wouldn't require it.
Okay. Mr. Barth, was that a motion?
Certainly I will make it a motion, and Kevin, have you thought of some exact language to use there?
I suppose it would be something to the effect of the proper waivers for the south property owners or south dwelling units must be obtained before building permit is obtained.
Okay.
And before, yeah.
So we've got a motion and a second with an additional stipulation on, a motion with no second, and no second, looking for a second, and the motion adds an additional stipulation. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second now to approve with the staff stipulation plus an additional one that waivers be obtained before a building permit is issued. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I think perhaps adding the one is a separate vote from the whole approval. But I just, he may want to vote against it just because of his concern. So we should add the 12th one with the vote separately than approving the whole thing.
So you didn't have a motion including that?
No, I was actually going to just put the condition number 12 on there to include getting the waivers.
Okay, so you're telling me your motion was to add a stipulation, not to approve yet at this point?
That was what I...
Okay, that's fine, and maybe that was your intention in your second. Wink, wink. Huh? Okay, so then we got a motion and a second to add a 12th stipulation that would state that waivers need to be obtained before a building permit is issued. I guess if I can speak, and you guys consider, I would add an additional out. And I'm probably just creating a Robert's Rule of Order issue here, but if he doesn't get the waivers, he should be able to come back to the management plan. Yeah, otherwise, he's dead in the water. Because there's a chance that he feels very confident he's going to get the waivers. If somebody says, no, I'm not going to get the waivers, normally the way that the ordinance is written, he can come and say, here's my management plan, it's superior to just putting in a CAFO, so there's grounds for varying.
He would potentially have to wait 6
months. Yeah, otherwise he's going to wait a period of time. So.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I think that if he says that he can get them, he can get them.
Okay. So we've got a motion and a second to add a stipulation requiring that the applicant get waivers before a building permit is issued. Is there any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, can I have a show of hands? Okay, we've got 3 of those opposed.
Nay.
2. Motion carries. So we've added a 12th stipulation.
I move the approval of this conditional use permit as amended with the conditions as amended.
Is there a second?
So,
A motion and a second to approve this conditional use permit for a CAFO with staff stipulations and the one that we just added. Any further discussion?
I would like to commend the applicant for coming forward, because I just want to emphasize, he does not have to apply for a CAFO for this size of facility. And he is showing good stewardship to intend to manage manure and manure runoff by going through this process. So that would be my comment, and because of that, I am supportive of approval of this project, because I believe in the long run it's good stewardship.
Yeah, the certificate of compliance is not required, but I think the CAFO would, the portion of it, I think so. I think he just misspoke. Is going to the state, he wouldn't have to do normally, but
That's
the fact
correct.
that he's doing it is really is good.
It is good.
Yeah. Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Thank you. Let's see, next item would have been item number 8 on the agenda, conditional use permit for Class B CAFO. And David, you get to be the staff reporting this time.
Good evening, Commission. David Heinold, Planning Department. As you can see on the map, this is a request from the petitioner, Selvin and Brenda Lacey. They're located, their property is actually located at, hold on 1 second. Hold the laser pointer. They actually live at this property right here, and they're proposing to build 2 barns, potentially one of which is located pretty much fairly parallel to this road right here. It's about 50 by 800 feet, and then the other one would be located over here. There's an existing access. I'll get to the pictures later. Just wanted to go through some of the location aspects of it. 50 by, it's like 525 feet or something like that. So 2 barns that would house up to 1,250 animal units or dairy calves. It's a Class B calf CAFO. The narrative mentions that there is an undetermined date for construction of the second barn, or the one that would be located right here. There is one existing dwelling within the minimum separation criteria, which is located, I believe it's right here. That this is a shed right there, and the house would be located right just south of that shelter belt right there. It's not including the petitioner's residence, which, as I mentioned, is just to the west of that. And the waiver has been signed by that property owner living right here, included for your reference. The requested size exceeds the state's requirement of 1,000 animal units, which is required per the zoning ordinance from the State Department of Environment and Natural Resources. The 2 proposed sites for the barns are not located. I skipped forward here. This is the setback map showing those locations. I'll go through this briefly. This inner line right here is the location of the half-mile buffer separation criteria from the property lines. And the petitioner has submitted another setback criteria for the location. Since the 2 barns are located on, this is 80 acres right here. The 2 barns would be located on approximately 20 acres. So they submitted the separation from those buildings, and those include from each house, which there's a house right here, which is within the separation area for the entire parcel, or the 80 acres. And then there's another property right here, which are the only 2 dwellings that are within this inner circle right here, the residence separation criteria. If I get back to, here's an indication of the site plan, which I mentioned before, the 2 locations of the proposed barns. With access off of this road, it's about, I would say, at least 100 feet from the intersection there. off of 265th Street. And then the other one, there's an existing approach there as I went out to the site and discovered that there was an existing field approach for the farm there. These are located on, as you'll see in the pictures, two hills it goes with the topography right there. And then there's a little, like a creek that runs in between the middle of those two. The two proposed sites for these two barns are not located over the shallow aquifer, which actually extends just to the north. It's not on there, but it actually comes about it doesn't come as far as south as the two proposed barn sites. So they're not required to obtain a groundwater discharge permit. However, monitoring may be required if site-specific conditions warrant monitoring to protect localized shallow groundwater supplies. And the petitioner did include test boring logs where the two barns would be located to show where those water levels were at the time of testing, and they can clarify on that info. The proposed confinement would be, as I said, constructed in two phases, which consists of 760 head of dairy calves varying size housed in the west barn, which is the one right here, and 490 head of dairy calves in the east barn, which is located right here. The barns would be constructed with concrete floors and walls engineered to contain all manure in accordance with the Natural Resources Conservation Service and DENR standards. And the narrative also indicates that the barns will be periodically packed with straw, which will absorb the manure and compact to form a solid pack on the barn floors over time. Additional storage space within the barns is also designated for storage of excess manure, as shown in the attached elevation. I believe it's not in here, but maybe briefly located on the end of the buildings. So that elevation is not in there. In the area immediately behind the feed bunks, which will be scraped and stored, so believe in this area right here. The site plan currently does not include a landscape plan, which the petitioner will be required to submit as a part of the zoning ordinance, which would include the shelter belt on the north and west sides, which is included as a condition on the permit. The barns will be placed to provide proper drainage away from the building perimeters to prevent stormwater contacting the manure contained within the barns themselves. The west barn would also have a roofed sorting and receiving area on the south side of the feed lane, so right where that drive is there. And the conditional use process includes several applicable requirements to be met as a part of the approval process. First, the operator shall maintain inspection and maintenance records on the animal waste facilities, records on compliance with the waste and nutrient management plan and odor and pest control plan, which has been provided with the application. Copies of records shall be filed annually with the county. A nutrient management plan is required to show that the application of manure shall meet setback and application requirements. The site is not located over a water source protection overlay district, so it will not be required to obtain geotechnical test boring, which the applicant has pursued that option just because of the closeness to the shallow aquifer where 4 Mile Creek is just to the north there. The provided narrative includes provisions for rendering services. And finally, as required by the ordinance that a registered engineer approves and inspects the facility before and while the facility is built. This shall be a requirement of the conditional use permit. And just briefly on the nutrient management plan, has been submitted along with the narrative for the proposal. It's been included with your packets. The submitted plan indicates that the petitioner has enough access to enough cropland available to apply manure based on the crop nitrogen needs as calculated. Waste application agreements must be submitted for the application of manure on property not owned by the petitioner. And just going through some of these pictures, when I visited the site on May 4th, and just going through approximate location of the proposed west barn looking to the northeast, this is where their existing cattle barn area where some of the dairy calves are, that they would like to move them inside the facility. This is the nearest residence right here, Miles Lacey, who has provided a waiver from the minimum separation criteria requirements. This is looking east on 265th Street, roughly where that first entrance to the west barn would be. Approximate location of, again, just getting through that. This is looking west on 265th Street. And this is that creek that I was talking about that would be between the two hills, if you might, between the two barns locations. This is where that east barn would be. As you can see, the access is right there. And again, this is the view west towards the wooded stream area, which is the one I talked about before, has a few trees in there. This is looking back west down that road. And then this is looking north towards that residence that was located to the north of the proposed site for the two barns. You can't see the residence, but you can see that there's a barn there. It's faintly off in the distance there, which is about a half mile or more away from the property, or within a half mile of the property boundaries, or the 80 acres. So this is the east barn. This is looking up from 4 Mile Creek at the proposed site, and then again, this is the same view from the creek there. And then this is from the intersection. As you can see, it goes up quite a bit from the intersection at 485th and 265th. And that is just going through some of those more pictures. And then again, this is their residence that is located about a quarter mile to the east. And then some of where they currently have cattle out on the lot, which they would like to move inside as they stood. And this is looking east. There are a few about 9 to 10 residences that are located about over a half mile to the west of the proposed site for the two barns. And this is looking down 265th Street towards the two sites. And just going through in determining, as you see from the pictures, the majority of the land near is used in agricultural production. However, there's a small cluster of those 10 residential homes that are located just to the west of the property, as well as the one that is located to the north of the property, that's within the half mile of the 80-acre subject parcel, as shown on the map. Some of the conditional use permit criteria is the effect upon the use and enjoyment of other property in the surrounding area for the uses already permitted and upon property values within the surrounding area. The primary use of property surrounding the dairy operation is agricultural farmsteads, residential acreages, and cropland. The described approximately 20-acre location of the operation meets the setback requirements for all properties except the single-family dwelling to the southwest of the parcel. There are a few single-family dwellings on acreages a little farther out directly to the west in the surrounding area, as I mentioned previously. The effect upon the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant property for uses predominant in the area. The construction of this operation will have little effect on the surrounding agricultural production lands. It may even be helpful to nearby agricultural production because of the manure that is produced can be applied onto cropland as an organic fertilizer. The petitioner owns or operates enough acres of cropland to utilize all of the manure that is produced as a result of the dairy operation. Since this proposal would result in a new facility, there is potential for concern by potential buyers and developers. It may have an effect on future development of rural single-family acreages in the surrounding area. If I go briefly back to the map, so there is. So there is an acreage property right here that's plotted about 7 or 8 acres that would have a building eligibility on it. That would potentially have an impact on future development if this proposal were to be approved. Since the comprehensive plan does also repeatedly warn against residential development inhibiting the productivity of agriculture within the county. 3, that utilities, access roads, drainage, and/or necessary facilities are provided. The proposed location for the dairy operation is located a little over a half mile from County Highway 109, as well as to the east of the other county highway. Petitioner intends on extending rural water and other utilities to the facility. I I did talk. I sent a letter out to the Valley Springs Township chairman, and I did receive a phone call from him earlier today that they expressed that they do not have any concerns over the proposed Class B CAFO operation. That the off-street parking and loading requirements are met. The operation is located on an approximately 20-acre site that will have enough space to meet off-street parking and loading requirements. Parking and loading in the right-of-way will not be allowed. 5, that measures are taken to control offensive odor, fumes, dust, noise, vibration, and lighting, inclusive of lighted signs, so that none of these will constitute a nuisance. Since this is a proposal for a new facility, there are some possibilities for creating nuisance problems. Of the problems, dairy operations primarily produce odor from the animal and manure facilities, and dairies increase traffic and workers that may increase the amount of dust created from the roads. The submitted narrative does not include any mention of an odor management plan or utilizing dust control methods on the township roads. Despite low densities of single-family dwellings, certain odor control measures should be a part of an operation of this size, and the planting of shelter belts, which would be included in the conditions, will significantly help with the odor control, and consideration should be given to other odor control alternatives. However, it is recognized that in no case that odor can be completely eliminated. And 6, the health, safety, general welfare of the public in the comprehensive plan. The proposed new dairy operation will unlikely cause a significant increase to the public health, safety, and welfare concerns because of the low density of dwelling units in the immediate vicinity. The proposed dairy operation will have to comply with the conditions of this permit and the regulations for CAFOs and the zoning ordinance for Minnehaha County. These rules and regulations are designed to allow for development while preventing much of the potential harms that a CAFO facility might create. And lastly, the proposed CAFO expansion is located firmly within the commercial agricultural area of the 1998 Comprehensive Development Plan. In the description of this designated area, the Comprehensive Development Plan states that the area is intended to be preserved for farm-related uses where such activities can freely operate without the need to impose restrictions due to competing uses. One of the policies of this designated area is to regulate concentrated animal feeding operations and processing operations to protect the environmental quality and minimize conflicts with human activities. The new dairy will be required to follow county ordinances specific to CAFOs and listed conditions. With these regulations in place, the proposed dairy operation works well within the directions of the Comprehensive Development Plan. So staff finds that the proposed CAFO expansion is an appropriate use within the commercial agricultural area of the Comprehensive Plan. So staff recommends approval of conditional use permit 1532 with the following conditions. 1, that the facility shall not exceed 1,250 animal units in size. Copies of the nutrient management plans shall be approved and filed with the Minnehaha County Planning Department on an annual basis. Approval must be obtained by the township for the construction of the new road access or new driveway. An address sign must be purchased at the planning department and placed at the driveway of the facility. 5, the roof sorting and receiving area must be in conformance with South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources design standards for any newly constructed waste containment facility. A registered professional engineer shall certify the plan specifications and the construction of the facility. 6, a landscaping plan shall be submitted to the planning department consisting of a shelter belt of trees on the north and west sides. Any dead trees shall be replaced within 1 season. 7, the facility shall conform to the submitted site plans. Any minor changes shall be approved by the staff at the Minnehaha County Planning Department. Major changes will require an amendment to this permit in a public hearing for the Planning Commission. 8, all driveways, parking areas, and loading areas within the dairy site must comply with the minimum standards that are listed in Section 15.04 of the 1990 Revised Zoning Ordinance for Minnehaha County. 9, a rendering service must be used to pick up and remove dead animals from the property. 10, a building permit is required for all structures prior to construction. 11, that the Planning and Zoning Department reserves the right to enter and inspect the dairy CAFO at any time after proper notice to the owner to ensure that the property is in full compliance with the conditional use permit conditions of approval in the Minnehaha County Zoning Ordinance. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Questions for Sam?
I have a question. We refer to it several times in here as being a dairy operation, and I usually associate a dairy operation with a facility that's milking cows. And my understanding is this is just going to be a calf growing facility, and he would be able to grow dairy or beef in this facility. So I'm just wondering if we need the words dairy in there, if it can just be written to be CAFO.
I think that's something that I think the applicant can clarify on that. That is a good point.
You could, I think the only place in the conditions that it's referred to is in item, condition number 11. You could just...
And 8.
Dairy site.
Oh, yeah. You could just strike out the word dairy in 8 and 11, and
Thank you.
then it's just a CAFO up to 1,250 animal units.
Any other questions for David? Thank you. Is the applicant here? Can you come forward, state your name and address, and tell us about your plans?
My name is Brian Donovan. I'm an attorney here in Sioux Falls, and I'm just going to introduce briefly the actual applicants who I'm representing, and that's Brenda and Selden Lacey. And I'm going to put them on the spot and have them explain a little bit about the actual operation here, because that's exactly right. Ms. Randall was correct in saying that this isn't actually a dairy. There is no intention to milk cows here, and this will be strictly a calf barn. It will likely be the majority of these calves are from dairies, but it will be a variety of calves, and they are intending to raise these calves to a certain weight, and then they'll move on. But I'll let them explain that briefly, and then we also have an engineer here who has provided the bulk of the information on the application, and he can address a little bit further the issues that go forth. We would ask that you do strike the word dairy from conditions 8 and 11, but other than that, I'll let these folks explain things.
We raise bottle calves for a few dairies, and we like to have a barn instead of having them outside from out of the hutch stage. And the dairies usually take them back at 200 to 300 pounds. And in time, you know, we don't have a lot of space on our place, so that's why we're looking to build over there.
Anything else you want to tell us that wasn't in the staff report? Or?
Well, we don't have employees,
Okay.
and it's a small, I mean, it might seem like a lot of animals, but it's it's family owned and operated. We have 3 boys, my husband and I, we've done this for 16 years, raised bottle calves, and we just like to have better health for the calves. Outside lots, they're in a lot of stress with the heat and the snow. We would just like to improve the conditions for the animals and for everybody around.
Well, how many calves do you have now that you're bottle feeding? Are they on your property now?
Yes, we have about 240 hutches,
Uh-huh.
and like I said, they're in the hutches for about 2 months. And like I said, then we raise them to 200 to 300 pounds, whatever the dairy requires of us.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for the applicants? Thank you very much.
I did have a couple of clarifications and additions to just help you understand the staff report a little bit better. In regard to the specifics on their existing operation and their intention, these are outside lots, and the reason why they want to go to the indoor lots was explained very well by them. But from an environmental standpoint and looking at the regulations that will apply to them and the reasons for their decisions to go with a confined operation under a roof instead of expanding their open lots is very specific to their need to ensure that they can capture the value in the manure here that will be generated. The idea is to put this all under a roof and not only to store the manure, but to use it on their operations. And they have been working with the Natural Resource Conservation Service in regard to their manure management plans and the additional things that they will do to ensure that they're able to utilize the nutrients and ensure that they don't have that nutrient value get off those farms and their properties. This is a family farm operation. You saw that Miles, and that's Selden's brother, is also living close by, and he's provided a waiver. They farm this, the brothers and the father also are involved here, and they've got their son. So it's a very intergenerational operation here, and they're going to do their best to manage this. But one of the things that they are very focused on is ensuring that they're able to utilize the manure and the nutrients in it in a wise fashion. And so that's part of the reason why they've gone with these confined operations. There are two distinct barns here, and I just want to address the fact that the future barn, which is listed there on the plans, is something that they will not immediately build, but they are here addressing all of the issues for the possibility of that future expansion. And their intention is to then go get the appropriate permits to ensure that they can eventually go to that size of operation, which means that they'll be under more regulation than necessary for the initial barn. And so that's also some evidence of their intentions to be good neighbors and good stewards of the land here. So I wanted to point all those things out to you, and then I will turn it over to Brian Fredrickson, who is the registered professional engineer who did the plans for this. I'll just ask him to touch on the setback issue to clarify a few things there.
Mr. Donahoe, I'm sure you're listening to the other cable that we just had a hearing on, and I'm sure you picked up on the fact that this is a confined animal feeding operation, not an enclosed animal feeding operation. Are you testifying that the animals will be enclosed in a building?
That's the intention, yes, that they will, that these are not, it's not like a milking parlor in an operation where they're confined 100% of the time. They'll be moved into this building, but the intention is to feed them inside the building. They're not going to be out and about on a regular basis. I don't know, I'm trying to think of a reason why they'd be out at any time, and I'm not coming up with it. That's why I look back at my plans here.
I get that, and you know, so maybe you guys want to, maybe come back with an idea of a percentage of time, because I think that would be a great interest of what percentage of the time they're enclosed as opposed to out and about, because when you talk about odor and things, it's going to be greatly reduced, I would imagine, if they're confined. They are enclosed as opposed to confined.
They are enclosed.
Right.
So in regard to the way that the operation works, they are delivered to the site, they go into the facility, and they stay in the facility. They're fed in that facility. The solid pack manure operations are taking place inside that barn. They scrape those. There is some storage. Then that fertilizer, and I'll call it fertilizer because that's their intention, is they'll use it for that. Mm-hmm. So then all of the activities take place in the barn. I was only hedging momentarily there to make sure that I hadn't missed anything, but Brenda can testify to that. There is no outside activity here. The animals will be in the barn. They will be enclosed.
Everything will be under the roof. It's part of the NRSCS's regulations, their rules. Then you don't have the rain that makes the manure run off. It's all contained. We have to follow their guidelines, and they are working with us, teaching us and showing us. Well, and Brian set up what the guidelines they have to go by to make the building legal according to their rules, because you have limitations on when you can spread the manure. Mm-hmm. They have the rules. You have to follow their guidelines, and that's we intend on following their guidelines, because I believe in the future everybody's going to have to do this, and we're going to do it now. And the manure, we have a divider wall between the bedding pack and where they eat, so that the looser manure will be cleaned out a little more regular. But like I said, all stored under a roof. The rain can't, it's all separated.
Right. Okay.
And the calves are in the barn. Like I said, the one dairy takes them back at about 300 pounds. So you're looking at 175 pounder to 300 pounds. And the reason the size is because his dairy, he's enlarging it, so we feel we're going to need the space to raise, to keep up with his supply, because we do both the heifers and bulls, so we will need the space for the calves.
Mr. Chairman, I was trying to look at the diagram. This is just a standard 50-foot monoslope building, is what we're looking at, like you see around the country.
Yeah, and the reason we have the receiving part and the working facility is the receiving, we like to take the calves and keep them in an area for about a week so they learn to group together. Then they get moved to the next place in the barn. And the working facility is, because the way we have it now, we don't have a working facility. And we decided if we're gonna do this, we're gonna have where we're not hanging over a fence. It's just convenience for the working facility. You know, that's why we had them added on to the barn.
There are also some biosecurity and hygiene enhancements that come with this type of setup as well. So.
And the manure, there's a product that we sprinkle on the manure. It's Penagenic K, and it helps to make the manure compost. And the odor, it's to help with the odor. You know, we've looked into a lot of, like the fly control. We can put clarify in the feed. We'll do some premise spray. And, you know, there's a lot of things we've been looking into to help control some of the worries. Because in the hutches, you have to deal, they're confined, so you learn to do a little of that because you're already confined in the animal.
Okay, thank you.
And I was going to have Mr. Frederickson just explain, I think it was clear from the staff presentation that we do meet all the required setbacks, but I just wanted to have a little further clarification on that, and I'll turn it over to him.
Okay, thank you. My name is Brian Frederickson. I'm a registered professional engineer with Dakota Environmental Inc. out of Huron. I was hired by the Lacey's to help put together some of the the regulatory paperwork and whatnot, designs with the facility. As was stated earlier, and I'll try not to go over too many things again, they are working with the Natural Resources Conservation Service and to try to coordinate this project. The goal of the NRCS being to get rid of the open lot situation and get those into a confined situation where everything is better controlled. NRCS is also working hand in hand with the Big Sioux Watershed Project as part of that process. As was stated earlier, it will also be subject to a DNR permit, so we're also working with them on that. So we have several layers of control over the project. The question of setbacks was brought up, and David, I don't know if we get back to the site plan on here. There you go. As David mentioned, we had put together a site setback measurement. And calculating the animal units on this project, we had calculated a half mile was required. On the site plan, where those come in, you see these circles. One to the north of the barn here, and one over to the west of the west barn. And what those are is that is a half mile from the nearest point of the nearest residences in those directions. That was calculated off of ArcView GIS software. Margin for error on that, I would say, would be minimal, plus or minus 5 feet. When the time comes for staking of these facilities, that will be done with Trimble GPS equipment. So I'm very confident that we can match that or not exceed those half-mile distances. Something to keep in mind as well on that is you've been told that this is a phased operation. The west barn is what they really want to get working on first, and the east one is a possibility down the line. They had asked me earlier in the process, should we try for both of these at once or just go with the one we want to build right away? And I had recommended do both. But keep in mind that if they were just doing the first barn with the 760 head, they would be one class lower. It would be a Class C, and their required setback would only be about 1,550 feet. So. I guess if there's any other questions you have for me regarding programs or design, or
any questions for Mr. Rich? Son? And thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to this item? If so, please come forward, state your name and address, and what you're about.
My name is Jill Kiefer, and I live at 48531 264th Street. in Valley Springs. I live on an acreage that's been in my family for 121 years. I am the fourth generation to live there. This home is very historic to my family. Our property is located less than a half a mile directly north of the petitioner's property in question. So when we received this notice, I was absolutely horrified at the words to allow a Class B CAFO 1,250 animal units. This is very concerning and opens up many questions that I hope can be answered and our concerns resolved. I was also shocked that the only people with the property a half a mile from the property in the notice were going to be notified. With this many animals, I was surprised that the majority of our many neighbors were not going to be notified. This feedlot will most definitely have a negative impact on more than just the people a half a mile away. The concerns my family and I have are the odor. How are you going to contain it so we are not forced to endure this odor 24/7, 365 days a year? What measures will you take to do this? I fear that we will not be able to enjoy the outdoors, like grilling, eating outside, gardening, grandchildren playing, especially our 2 grandsons with asthma, and just being able to sit on our patio and enjoy the fresh air. I sure hope it will not penetrate the interior of our home. The flies. These insects are drawn to the buildings by the swarms and multiply by the thousands. They also spread bacteria and disease. How will you manage this problem? The waste. How and where are you storing and getting rid of the waste? Housing. Where are the animals going to be housed, and how often does the area get cleaned? The noise. With this large amount of animals, it will be very noisy. How will you deal with this problem? Environmental. Do you use pesticides, antibiotics? Where does your runoff go when it rains? The property value. There has been over $200,000 worth of improvements done to our home and property. This will surely have a negative impact on the value of the property if this feedlot is allowed. Guidelines. How and who will check to make sure if there are any guidelines that they will be enforced? I thank you for listening to our concerns, and I hope you will really listen to what we are saying, because this feedlot will harm me and my family's way of life in a very unhealthy way. I was going to bed Saturday night, and I thought the winds have died down and the rain stopped. What a nice night to sleep with the window open, to get some fresh night air and listen to the sounds of the night. I hope I can still sleep with the window open, as my family's done for 121 years. I feel the people doing this are very selfish and hypocrites. My family has been on the same farm for over 100 years. We are trying to keep this a wonderful generational home where our kids, grandkids, and extended family can keep our traditions alive. This farmer who wants to put this feedlot here truly is most inconsiderate and obviously doesn't care about this historic farm or our family in it or the surrounding community. Not very neighborly. I'm thinking that to myself, and quite a few of our neighbors have been blindsided, and I think that this is a serious enough matter that this request should be put on hold so as we may investigate the concerns I have stated. This seems like it's being forced upon us. Please allow us some time. Only a handful of people were notified, and there are many who this will impact. I believe everyone has the right to make a living and support their family, but I also believe that it should not be at the expense of everyone else within the surrounding community. So please, really take our concerns into review. This will greatly impact not only me and my family's way of living, but the many households in our neighborhood. Please allow us more time. I thank you.
Any questions for Mrs. Keever? Mrs. Keever? Anyone else?
Sir, I'd like to speak.
Oh, okay. We've got one here, and we'll get you next. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
My name is Mike Jansen, 48665 264th Street. My concerns are more so as to the impact of what's on the county as to these gravel roads that I've driven on. The road base is very, very soft. Being that I'm looking at this, being my experience in the past with commercial farming industry, is that this is a commercial operation. There's going to be a lot of semis running up and down these roads, a lot of heavy equipment. You're going to impact these gravel roads that go west and south and eventually meet up with the blacktops, and those are going to be affected. Something else I heard in the write-up was that rural water was going to be used. A general average cow uses 10 gallons a day in drinking. And on a rural water system, that's a lot, depending upon the number of the head of cattle. Those are just a couple of things that come to my mind at this moment. And listening to her list of things, that I think there's a little bit more investigation. Being fully enclosed and confined, as they have said, odor is limited, but the word is limited. It's not gone by any means because it is manure. I don't know what kind of ventilation they plan on using. That is a methane gas that will build up in there, so that's got to be extinguished. I've worked on operations that have had full floating slabs, and all you do is scrape the patio, and it goes beneath the buildings. That operation that I've worked with in that, sprinkling that product on is a waste of money. I don't foresee that ever being useful unless they go from a waste bed, they sprinkle the product and wait a week, and then they scrape it to the manure holding tank. Again, it's just, I don't know, that's too large for that area. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions from Mr. Jameson? Thank you. I guess if you want to come forward.
Thank you. My name is Bart Trevelyan. I live at 48427 264th Street. And my concern again is the odor and what it'll do to our property values and the traffic. I mean, for feed trucks coming in and calves going on. One question I had, the calves are fattened to 300 pounds and then they go back to the dairy? Is that, you're supplying the dairy, right? Okay. Again, I would be concerned about the general valuation of property in the area. It is going to be a large operation for that area. There's many houses all the way around. That the other question I have, what is there flaked corn involved?
It's pellets. They're on pellets.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we need to hear it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, what was your question? Because you turned away
Yeah,
from the microphone.
I was wondering what type of feed. They said it was pellets. That,
okay.
You know, silage and flaked corn, like in a fattening feedlot, has odor in itself. But our concern is the general odor and devaluation of property in the area and the traffic.
Are you a farmer yourself, or a rural residence? Or?
I'm a resident in the area. Okay. We live on an acreage. It's been there for about 40 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else that has anything new and not redundant, please come forward.
My name is Steve Lambert. I live at 48439 264th Street. And excuse me, as a member of the Edgewold League, my prime concern was pollution. There's 2 creeks running across that property, and that creek, 4 Mile I believe they call it, runs into Beaver Creek Nature Area. Now I take my grandkids over there fishing and hiking, and so I'm more than a little concerned about the pollution and the preservation of the parks. As one other person here talked about the road conditions there, I drove down there just this last week after all the rains we've had, and I would not try to take either one of those corners in any direction from that property with a semi-load of cattle. My son drives cattle for a living, and he wouldn't try it either. It was soft. There's a bridge over that creek I don't think is going to handle a semi. Bury a handle a tractor. And there's going to be necessary major improvements on the roadways there. And I commend their efforts on trying to control the manure problem, but we had 3.5 inches of rain out there on Mother's Day. One little leak, and you're going to have thousands of gallons of raw sewage running into that creek. And that's my main concern. Thank you.
David, if I may, maybe I'm getting confused with the other one. Was this one where the township had been contacted about roads? Is that correct? Or?
Sent out a letter to the township, and they called back today and said they had no concerns.
Okay. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to this item? Yes, sir.
David, I see your map here.
Your name and address, please?
Chris Larson. I'm at 26384 485th Avenue. And what's this right here?
265th Street. This is the subject parcel right here.
So that's 485th, and then that's 264th?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I'm right here. My house has been there since 1977. And we got about 10 acres, and we live out there because we want to, enjoy nature. And then my neighbors right here, same thing. They got horses. There's farmers all around us. We got no problem with that. But you go within a mile and over here, there's a lot of new homes, people moving out there. They're not moving out there to smell this. This is, I don't have a problem with people making a living, but they're looking to go 5 times the number of cattle they got right now. So that's quite a bit. So I got the same problem that my other neighbors have been talking about. But, let's take into account, there's probably another 15 homes right over here. If you look at this map I'm talking about. So, Sioux Falls is about 10 miles from here. Brandon's 4 miles. Valley Springs a couple miles. Over the next 20 years, we're going to see more and more people wanting to move out there, which is good. People enjoying nature. And so it's going to bring property values down for sure. And I don't think we need an operation quite that big out there. So I'm against the smell. I don't think anybody can make the case that this is going to increase property values, make the air smell good, or make it more healthy to live out there. I don't think any of you guys could make that case. I don't think any of you guys would want this by your house within 1 mile. You wouldn't want it within 1 mile of, Brandon city limits. So there's a lot of houses out there. Like I said, these here, and then what you're not seeing on the map, there's a lot of homes up there too. People that have acreages that are out there living. So.
All right. Does anyone now have anything else that they'd like to add that is new? And I'm going to close the floor and ask the commissioners. As the applicant, I will allow you to rebut any concerns or explain.
Actually, you have several people who wanted to speak about some of the positives of this type of an operation, and who will be able to address some of the specific concerns.
That's fair. Yes.
I would ask Walt Bones to start.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, good evening. I just first like to start out, I've known the Lacey's probably most all of my life that I can remember, a part of it anyway. And this project, this family epitomizes, I think, what we really want in agriculture. This is a multi-generational family, multi-generational family farm, and it's becoming harder and harder. As we all know, the property values have gone up exponentially here in the last 10 years or so, and it's going to become really, really tough for young kids to break into farming. And livestock agriculture probably gives us the best opportunity for those kids to do that. So again, this project in my mind epitomizes what we want for South Dakota agriculture. Also want to, as the previous applicant also did, but these folks are going above and beyond what they'd have to do to get this project started. And I think that's very admirable. For those of us that, I'm part of an operation that has a state permit, that's a CAFO. And the additional regulations and rules and everything that go along with that, and maybe just enlighten maybe some of your audience. But we can't just indiscriminately go out and spread these organic nutrients on the soil. We first have to go get a soil test of the ground that we're going to put it on to find out how much of these nutrients, the nitrogen, the phosphorus primarily, are already in the soil. And then we have to test the product itself, that manure product itself, to find out how many units of nitrogen and phosphorus in that. And then we look at our yield goals. If we want 150 bushel corn, 200 bushel corn, whatever that is, that takes so many units of those nutrients. And that determines then how much of these products that we can put on the soil. We cannot just indiscriminately go out and there's specific tracts of land. You've got to have all of the easements and everything that you've got taken care of. So this is, again, coming to you folks is step one of a process. And they will be heavily scrutinized, have annual visits by potentially the county, but also from the State Department of Environment and Natural Resources. And I can, with personal contacts and the relationships that I have with that, I say our Department of Natural Resources in South Dakota, led by Secretary Steve Perner, is second to any of them that I put up against anywhere in the nation. These folks are really fantastic. They really are. Also want to compliment you folks on all the work for the last 2 years that you've gone through in reviewing and doing all the work you've done to look at your comprehensive plan. And it's in that process where you come up with these setbacks. Through, again, hours and hours of meetings, through hours of public testimony, that's where those of us in the public have an opportunity to come to you and tell you what we think is appropriate for setbacks, for the variances and all the different conditions that put on there. And I know, again, that you folks have just gone through an exhaustive process of reviewing all that. This project meets all those criteria with the conditions that are put. So, again, thank you very much. Oh, one other point I wanted to make, too. As we all know, a young calf, a 200-pound calf, the amount of manure, of nutrients that is going to produce is much different than a 1,500-pound cow. Unfortunately, under South Dakota and federal law, each of those is an animal unit. So 1,250 little baby calves, you won't have near the amount of nutrients produced as you would 1,250 head of 1,500-pound milking dairy cows eating 100 pounds of feed a day. So there's a huge distinction there. But again, thank you very much for your service to Minnehaha County and the state of South Dakota, and I would urge you to approve this application. Thank you. Stand by for questions.
Any questions for Mr. Bones? Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Rob Kiefer. I live at 48531-264. Yes, he did say they are small. They don't move near as much as a big cow, but they're going for a feedlot. That's all. I mean, it's calves today. It could be cows tomorrow.
No, it cannot. Well, you can change the animals. The amount, the animal units is regulated by the number of.
I understand.
The calculation of the table.
Yes,
so
I know, but it's still 1,250.
Right.
It's a lot. And a couple of trees in the way, I don't know, you guys must live out here. You can go down 229 out by 26th Street. You can still smell morels. There's a lot of trees in the way. Thanks.
Got time for one more.
Can I ask the applicant a question, please? I want
Yes.
to ask Brenda. Now, you had mentioned compost. Is this a true compost barn or not? Or just a bed and pack?
It's a bedded pack. It's a straw bedding on cement.
Because I have been in heifer barns that are true compost barns. Okay.
Brenda, I got a question for you. On this proposed barn that you might put up, is there ever a chance you might do breeding of heifers in there or no?
I can't say no.
Okay.
Because if we could, but I mean, that's not saying we are, but right now we don't plan on it.
Okay.
But I can't say my boys wouldn't.
Okay. Thanks for being
That's-
honest.
Mr. Dono?
If I could just have our engineer address one of the odor issues, I think we can help people understand some of the, I'll call it the scope of what we're really dealing with here. And I need to emphasize again, what we're talking about here is different from fattening cattle. They are raising calves from a young age off the dairy to a intermediate stage, I'll call it, and then they're going back to the dairy. So it's not like you're fattening cattle through maturity to slaughter, which is a completely different operation. And the reasons for them using the pack with the fertilizer that they were creating instead of using a true compost system is because of the fact that you're going to have more turnover of these calves with this type of system. That's part of it. And in addition to that, the way these barns are going to be set up, and in order for them to ensure better buffers and other things with their setbacks, they're not going to want to go to composting with this type of barn. So they're not going to be changing, because of the more specialized nature of these barns, they're not going to be changing to any kind of a feedlot operation where you're going to have mature cattle to market weight in these barns. So I just want to make sure that was clear.
Mr. Frederickson?
I'll try to keep it brief. What you have in front of you there is results of some odor modeling we did using an SDSU developed tool. Basically goes through and uses the footprint of the operation, prevailing wind directions, and calculates a distance at which no annoying odor will be noticed. The first page that you have there, it's broken out into the two barns, west barn and east barn. But the west barn, it calculated that to reach a point from the barn where you would only you would have no annoying odor over 99% of the time, would only be 2,800 feet. So and over that distance from the barn, and that's the maximum direction in the direction of the prevailing winds. The other directions would be less. At that distance from the barn, you would only have an annoying odor 1% of the time. As you can see from the tables, as you go down 98, 97, 96, the distances drop off fairly quickly. And the east barn is similar. And then we also modeled that with some odor control, basically the trees and the measures that Lacey's described, and that 99% distance then dropped to about 2,200 feet, and as you can see, the other percentages dropped quite a bit as well. The maps that are included on the back basically show those radius from the proposed barns at that 99%. I guess one other thing I'd like to point out too, in regard to some of the comments that were brought up, is that this is a solid manure handling system. It's not a liquid system. You don't have any lagoon, you don't have any holding tanks or anything like that that would be subject to any kind of a catastrophic failure that could result in a large liquid release. It's not a concern with this operation. It's totally contained under roof, so you don't have stormwater contacting any of the animals that are near.
We've seen something like this in previous CAFOs, so just remind you though, so when you're like at 97% annoyance rate, so that's like 97 days out of 100, is that what that means?
Right.
Now normally, Brian, oftentimes there's a wind rosette model that shows wind direction, prevailing winds. I didn't see that.
Yeah, that's all. It's part of the program's
based on that
workings. Yeah, like I said, Mike, the maps are put together rather than modify those radiuses with the specific distances in each direction. We just took the worst case and projected it out in all directions from the building.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Frederickson?
Just wrap up very briefly by emphasizing the point that this is the Lacey's property here, and they have met all the setback requirements. And I just want to point out to the Planning Commission here that this is a pretty rare circumstance where you have an operation that actually can use their own land instead of having to go out and find someplace that meets the setback requirements for what they want to do to expand. And bring it back to the point that their expansion is intended to benefit this family farm in a way that helps increase the value for the operation, but I think increase the value for the area here. And I don't believe there's any evidence that this will actually reduce property values for the neighbors, because we can meet that odor control modeling and they will not be disturbed. So with that, we would ask for your approval of this conditional use permit subject to those requirements listed, just taking out the work area conditions 8 and 11. Thank you.
Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I guess I'll make a motion to take the word dairy out first of all.
Okay. motion
I'll
to...
second it.
All right. There's a motion and a second to remove the word dairy from this, the stipulations in this application. Any other...
I'll say this, I actually live a third of a mile from a fat cattle feeding operation. It's under a roof similar to this. And it smells twice a year when he cleans it out. And that's it. And I expect that. And I also have another one a half a mile this way, about the same number of head, about 250 head confinement barn. I never know that one. He does over there. And the thing that's different about this, and I know right now they're raising dairy calves up to 300 pounds. And animals of this size, if you can smell the operation, you've got dead calves and you're not going to be in business long. It's that simple. I mean, that's the way it is. Now, you may not believe that, but I'm in the dairy business myself as a consultant. I work with people on their financials. In other words, if it doesn't make money, you're not going to be around long. And if you can smell an operation like this, you're not going to be around long. It's that simple. And like I said, I don't know the Lacey's. I've never been on their place. But I do know that if they've been raising calves for a long time, they obviously know what they're doing, because if you're successful at wet calves, the next stages are so easy. It's unbelievable. So I would move for approval with the conditions as stated.
We've got a motion on the floor here, first of all, to remove the word dairy from...
Oh, right. I thought you felt.
No, we got to call a
But
question.
I will move after whatever we do here.
Sure. So we got a motion to remove the word dairy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So this dairy is struck from 8 and 11 in the stipulations. Mike, you want to make your motion?
Again, like I say, I'm not concerned about the odor. I'm more concerned about my neighbor's dog a quarter-mile away that wakes me up at 5:30 in the morning, because I can hear that rather than this CAFO. But I would move for approval due to the fact this place has a state permit. They're basically moving their cows inside under the roofs, so they don't, like when you had your 3-inch rain out there the other day, all those yards got flushed right in through your Beaver Creek Nature Area, and that's not going to happen anymore with this type of situation. And it's very important that we do this. People don't realize this. Within a few years, a lot of these people with 50, I don't care if they have 50 cows, 500 or 5,000. Right now, the 50 cow guys, his stuff can pretty much just get flushed down the drain. Nobody knows the difference. But if all of a sudden you got 1,000 cows, now all of a sudden you have to contain it. Well, which one is better for the environment? You know, it gets to be pretty simple things. And so that's why I would move for approval, because they're definitely improving their operation. Yes, it's getting bigger, but unfortunately, the result of getting bigger is you can't afford to do it if you don't get bigger because of the economics.
Second, I'd like to make a comment as well.
Yes, please.
You know, this is a common problem that we have, is the conflict between residential and long-term farms and newer operations. But the fact is that it's zoned ag, it's not zoned museum. Things change. 150 years ago, people were getting shot trying to string barbed wire. Today, we think of barbed wire as being perfectly routine. Well, the processes involved in agriculture are changing, and agriculture is changing. Minnehaha County is one of the top agricultural counties in the state of South Dakota. I think we're currently number 4 or 5. The price of corn hasn't helped us, I don't think. In any case, things are going to happen that are different than in the old days. Every home that's built in a rural area diminishes the opportunity for a farmer to use his land to farm on using these types of things. The value of the agriculture part of the thing is diminished when we build more houses out there. We need to have food. It's one of the things we sell to China. People can always buy their neighbor's land instead of letting them do what they want. And certainly every time thousands of people move to the rural area to enjoy the outdoors get destroyed. We're a lot safer having an engineered waste disposal system than tens of thousands of cattle standing in the middle of the Big Sioux River, plop, plop, fizz, fizz. That stuff is going out New Orleans from last year right now. We are doing something better by having an engineered waste disposal system. And the rural area is not going to stay the same. So I would urge all of us to think about our properties and how things are going to change. And if you need to control the other people's land, buy it.
I just express my support for what Jeff and Mike so eloquently stated.
And I'll just make a comment. I want to commend both Brenda and Sylvan for doing such a fine job on what you've been doing so far for all these years. Because I know the one picture people really look at, when you get a big rain, there are stuff does run right into the creek right now, and you're trying to alleviate that, so I commend you.
Other comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. The motion to approve carries. Item number 9. Kevin, we'll have you up as soon as things kind of settle down here a little bit.
Can I get one of those stats for the file? So that I can print it out? I just need one. Anything on mine here? Yeah. Can I email it to you?
Yes. Somebody to allow that tile.
20 minutes.
Kevin, go ahead.
Yes, Kevin Hickman, County Planning Department. Item number 9 is conditional use permit to exceed 1,200 square feet of total accessibility. Building requesting 6,000 square feet total. The property is located approximately 3.5 miles north of Sioux Falls, or 1 mile north of the Redwood Corner, along South Dakota Highway 115. The property is just north of a subdivision, which makes it requirement to have this conditional use for a building larger than 1,200 square feet. Petitioner is requesting a 60 by 100 building for a total of 6,000 square feet. Submitted site plans show the location of the building in the southwest corner of the property. Oh, I don't know this way. And the dwelling located in approximately middle of the site. The site is currently unscreened and is currently farmland and undeveloped. It's been recently platted. None of the area's developments have been developed. None of the area lots have been developed. A nearby residential site located southeast has 3,360 square feet of accessory building constructed prior to the plats that you see on the map, the subdivision plats. Another site, approximately a quarter mile to the northeast of the site, has an 18,720 square foot structure that is used for a riding arena and a stable for that ag development property. So it's an ag use that has more than 80 acres of contiguous land. The parcel, the effect on surrounding property. The large building may have a minor effect of the character of the neighborhood, and steps should be taken to minimize, including landscape requirements and making sure that no commercial use of the operation is there at any time. Effect upon normal and orderly development, as there will be no commercial use of the building, the area should develop just fine from that. However, this may lead to the other dwelling units in the area to request similar large-size buildings, so there may be a precedent that is being set with the construction of this building, the approval of this building. All the utilities are met and parking will be met as well. Since there will be no commercial operations on the property, there should be little to no nuisance created through this land use. And the proposed accessory building shall have little to no effect in health, safety, and general welfare of the public.
Staff finds this accessory building is acceptable with an A1 agricultural district and recommends approval of the conditional use permit with the following conditions. The building permit for the accessory building shall not be obtained until permit for the dwelling unit is obtained first. A total accessory building square footage shall not exceed 6,000 square feet. A road tree spaced a minimum 20 feet apart shall be placed on the west, north, and east sides to assist in screening the view of the building from the right-of-way. Trees should be planted within 1 year of the approved building permit, and dead trees shall be replaced within 1 year. Consideration for driveway location will be given for spacing of trees. The accessory building shall be placed according to the submitted site plan. A building inspection is required to determine the building does not exceed 6,000 square feet measured from the outside perimeter. The building shall be an accessory use to the continued use of the property as a residential lot. Only personal residential storage shall be allowed in the building. No commercial uses of commercial storage will be allowed at any time. All outdoor lighting shall be a fully cut off, fully shielded design to prevent direct spillage of light beyond the property boundaries. A building permit is required prior to the construction of the accessory building. The property shall utilize only one driveway for the accessory building and the attached residential garage. The driveway must be permitted by Mapleton Township. The building shall be painted a color similar to tone of that of the house, as not call undue attention to the size of the building. The Planning and Zoning Department reserves the right to enter and inspect the accessory building at any time after proper notice to the owner to ensure that the property is in full compliance with the conditional use permit conditions of approval and the Minnehaha County zoning ordinance. And just some pictures of the site. There's the locations of the two nearby accessory buildings of any substantial size.
So, Kevin, is it fair to call an ag use building an accessory building? I mean, you wouldn't do that with a barn, would you?
I guess this is not an ag use building.
I thought I heard you say that in the report.
Oh, did I say that?
Yeah. It's not written, but you said that verbally.
Okay. Well, I must have misspoke that.
Okay.
The property is currently ag, and it will be a residential use for the. There's the site. There's the development across the street from it. There's the large horse stable / riding arena. And there's the other 3,000 square foot building across the intersection. So.
Is there a house on this site?
Not yet.
So why are we approving this?
It is required to have the dwelling permit before the dwelling permit of this.
So that is in place?
Yes.
That's some of the stipulations, I think.
They are planning on building a house, and they have already got a permit for the house. Is that what you said?
They have not received a permit for the house yet.
Okay, how many eligibilities on this property?
There's only one eligibility on this site.
If you weren't looking at the riding facility, then the nearest one is 3,300 and 1,600 feet. Okay. Any other questions for Kevin?
I just have a question from previous experience. Painted or colored in a similar tone as to the house. Is that adequate if they choose to paint their house bright purple? Just personal experience.
Personal experience, even. Frankly, I ended up in a pink house.
Where do you live again?
No, I'm just thinking about experience from this commission.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're going to do something appropriate. I wouldn't be too concerned about that.
You could say earth tone colors or something like that if you wanted.
I have just another question. So when going south from that location, do you then go up a slight rise and then suddenly burst over the hill into Renner? Is that where we had some concerns about the speed with that Mr. Sadat?
It's close, yeah.
That would be just underneath this picture.
Okay. And no one wants to hook up to the water district there, or whatever, sanitary or whatever it was. Okay, sorry.
Thank you, Kevin. Is the applicant here? Can you come forward, state your name and address, tell us about your project?
Good evening. My name is Stacy Hennon. I'm an attorney here in Sioux Falls representing the petitioners who were not able to be here due to a conflict that maybe they would not have had at 9:15 at night. They did purchase this 7 acres. They do intend to build a new home. Their building plans should be finalized and ready for that permit process soon, but due to the timing of this meeting, it was recommended that they go for the conditional use so that when they start building their home, it'll line up instead of having to wait for the construction of the other.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the structure, because it's 60 by 100, height, materials, those
Sure. It is a pole-type shed, 60 by 100. They are retaining, I believe it's Dakota Steel out of Canton to do that construction. They are aware of the restrictions and have reviewed all of the recommendations that the county put on this. I have confirmed with them mainly what they intend to use it for is not ag at all. Campers, snowmobiles, garden tractor, lawnmower. I do know his father has a antique tractor collection, and I would assume he may inherit 1 or 2 of those one day when his father passes away. But it's mainly just personal storage. And I would assume that, yes, it will be complementary to their home, because I do think they are investing quite a bit of money in their new
The sidewalls like 18, 20, 24, you know how wide or how tall this building's going to be?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that.
So it can become pretty imposing if it gets pretty tall.
I did drive out to the site myself, and I would say, because right at first too, I thought, oh, that's pretty large. It does appear that there are a lot of people, not just the 2 closest there, but other ones in the area. It appears to me to be kind of a trend for everybody to build these accessory pole barn sheds with their homes for storage, which actually I think when I drive around some homes, that maybe looks better than having everything just outside.
It is a conflict for us, actually, I think, to whether it should be inside or our issue, just so you know, because obviously you probably picked up on some concern when it gets moved from consent agenda to the regular agenda, is that good intentions often can change, particularly when the property is eventually sold and the next person decides that he wants to do a welding shop in it. Pretty soon we've got commercial activity that's not appropriately permitted and we've got a mess. Or they start to rent storage space in it, and you got people all sending out it the first weekend in May to pick up their boats to get ready for Memorial Day weekend, and those types of things. So those are our issues, and you wouldn't believe the number of tractor collections that we deal with. I can't believe there's that many antique tractors. Why don't they use those suckers longer? I don't know. But anyhow, any questions for Mrs. Hennon?
Hennon, Hennon.
Mr. I do share your concern about a commercial aspect going on here. You know, a mini storage facility, a welding shop, a airplane hangar.
We've got all of those.
It's. Can you give us any assurance that they won't be using it commercially?
Well, first off, I believe it is one of the items that is required for them to get this conditional use permit, that it not be used for commercial use. Secondly, I do believe with proper notice, the county can come out and look at it. Thirdly, I've represented this family for about 25 years. They have property on North Cliff already with substantial commercial space, and actually are looking at expanding that facility, which I would assume at some point will be in front of another commission. This is strictly for residential. They have no intention of leaving that North Cliff business property, and I believe that's where all their commercial activity would take place.
These folks over 60 years of age, or I mean, are they going to be selling this property, retiring there, or are they?
I would. They have 2 children.
Uh-huh.
One will be a senior in high school next year, and the other one will be I'm going to say 9th grader.
Potentially longer-term owners. Then that's
have
my
the-
reason for asking the
Yeah.
question. I don't even know.
Okay.
I'm going to get in some kind of easy
No,
way question or whatever, even though I'm not employed.
They currently live on the east side of town, close, not quite to the Dolly Farms development. They have a nice home there that they're selling. They really want to be out in the country. The children are older. They'll be able to drive. So the transportation issue is not as big an issue for them. They've owned, the bargain barn there on North Cliff. Their dad has for years. They have no intention of leaving Sioux Falls, no intention of leaving South Dakota. They do take a vacation or 2 a year, but I fully anticipate this will be a lifetime home for them.
Okay.
I would say the only reason I brought this up was, okay, now you just set the precedence for every shed in that next to it. So all those neighbors across the road, when they come in and say they want a
6,000 square foot, we have a hard time saying no.
Yeah, but unless all the neighbors around them object, then we can say no. We can say no anyway. But once we usually kind of set a precedence for neighbors, that's what it ends up being.
It's a big building, and we're opening up a whole new can of worms. Because am I correct, staff, that these lots to the east are not developed?
South.
South, excuse me.
They're vacant.
They're vacant. So we're going to be looking at, our ordinance is targeting 1,200, not bigger than 1,200, and we're going to go
5 times that.
Yeah.
But if they just build a 60 by 100 shed and put the living quarters in the corner, they'll be good.
They don't want to get rent.
That's happened before.
Okay.
No, I
Thank
think
you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to this item? Don't feel slighted because there were so many for the last one. So. Commissioners?
I do have the concern with the side, but I'll move for approval.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second to approve 6,000 square feet of accessory building.
I'm probably going to vote against it because I do believe that it's a precedent for that neighborhood, and just think it's too big right now.
Any other conversation?
I have concerns with that too, especially with those lots that aren't opened up yet for residential. And just like we just talked, once you set a precedent here, it's pretty hard to go back and say to the next guy that maybe down the road, well, you did it for that guy, what about me now? I tend to agree, I think it's a little large.
I'll kind of echo the same statement. 6,000 is awfully big. Smaller, I can see passing, but 6,000 I'm very leery of.
No, I believe while we're here tonight, we can take subsequent action if we wanted to approve something smaller, if by chance this motion didn't pass. I will call a question. All those in favor of the approval of the 6,000 square foot accessory building, conditional use 15-33, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign?
Aye.
The motion to approve is denied. And I just brought up that when we deny something, they can't come back for quite a period of time. So but I think since they're here, do you know what your...
You can take subsequent action if you...
Yeah.
I would certainly... Maybe we would be most fair is to go with the, whatever that is, 30... What's the...
3360.
3360. And then, I mean, that's the precedent that's already there.
Correct. Correct. That's kind of what was on my mind as well.
360, call it 3,400.
3,400.
Make a motion for 3,400 to allow 3,400 square foot building.
Motion is there a second?
I'd second.
Okay. Any further discussion on 3,400? square foot accessory building for this conditional use application. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And they've been approved for 3,400.
If your applicant or your clients can always appeal, so to the county commission.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 10. Kevin, you're back up. You're getting frequent presenter points. That gets you a free night off, I think.
Something like that.
Lucky Scott.
All right, item number 10, Kevin Huckman, County Planning. Item number 10 is to allow a salvage / junkyard / storage operation on the property legally described as 3A, Block 2, Brower Edition. This is located approximately a quarter mile south of Hartford. This property is located at 4633 Jeffrey Street on the south side of Brower Edition, which is firmly an industrial zone district. There is agricultural district to the east and the south with pasture land mostly on the south. 5 single-family dwelling units are located 1,500 feet to the south of the property, but there's pretty big distance between them. The site is currently used as a junkyard. There's a hoop structure on the property in the east. In the south of the property lines have thick planted trees along them. See that? The neighboring property already has a 6-foot tall privacy fence that provides some barrier between the property to the west and the current petitioner's property. The north side of the property has a 6 or 7 foot chain link fence, which doesn't provide any visual barrier. The petitioner is requesting to operate the salvage junkyard operation at the site, and it's submitted narrative. This is in part because of a code enforcement. The petitioner has gone through several steps, including an ordinance text amendment to allow a salvage yard in the I-1 industrial. In searching and researching salvage yards in the area, staff contacted the South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources if there's any permits or concerns that they would have. And the DNR responded that there's no specific concerns that they'd have for an operation this size, and that if there is any concern, they can apply for a general wastewater permit similar to that as a CAFO. The effect upon the enjoyment of the other property in the surrounding area. The junkyard poses some concerns for neighboring properties of unsightliness and nuisance for as the primary nuisance on the property. Visual barriers shall be the primary way to combat this nuisance. The operation uses trucks and trailers to haul from the site. In the known conditions of the road, as more traffic goes on the road, there's more problems with the road conditions. The effect on orderly development in the surrounding property. The site is located with a well-established industrial district, but many of the businesses are industrial type, and most areas are screened outdoor storage. The land use will likely unaffect the future development of the site area. The area does have access to roads and drainage and utilities. The area is accessed off of Jeffrey Street, and a portion of that which is paved, which will require by county ordinance hard surfacing. It is acknowledged that many of the other businesses along this hard surface area have not yet completed the requirement, and we will have to go through code enforcement on these other properties as well as this property and to get them into compliance or find some other ways to move forward with this. The plan does not include any, the site plan that he submitted does not include any parking for the visitors and employees, but the facility will have to provide 2 parking spaces for every 3 employees, which will have to be hard surfaced. The area that is considered maneuvering area of the primary area of the lot can remain gravelled, but the driveway and the parking will have to be hard surface. The measures are taken to control offensive odors, fumes, dust, noise, vibration. No offensive odor shall be permitted at any time in the salvage yard. Screening is the best way to limit aesthetic problems. Limiting height of stacking of vehicles on the property to below that 6-foot line, below the screen, so that it doesn't stack above what is visual. And then limit the potential noise issues, crushing, dismantling, that sort of thing, by limiting the hours of operations. The health, safety, and general welfare of the public. The day-to-day operation of the proposed land use will have minimal effect on the health, safety, and general welfare of the public. The proposed salvage yard, as I said, is in an industrial zoning district that's proximity to the interstate intersection, which allows it for good for the comprehensive plan in that area. Staff finds the proposed salvage junkyard is reasonable use of the land within I-1 industrial zoning district. Staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit with the following conditions. No direct sales to the customer shall occur on the property, including but not limited to vehicles and parts. All fluids and waste materials shall be stored in enclosed containers and disposed of through the proper facility. No dumping or burning waste fluids or materials will be allowed. No storage of hazardous waste will be allowed. The 6-foot opaque fence shall be placed along the entire north and south property lines. The 6-foot opaque fence shall be erected within 3 months of the trees being removed on the east side of the trees being removed on the east side of the property neighboring the fence, and or the neighboring fence being removed on the west side, and that's in case the trees get cut down or the fence gets removed. No stacking or piling vehicle materials, parts, or similar items higher than 6 feet tall from the ground. That all outdoor lighting shall be full cut off and fully shielded designed to prevent direct spillage of light beyond the property boundaries. And that a building permit is required prior to the construction of any building structure or sign. That driveway and employee parking shall be hard surface according to Article 15 of 1999 revised zoning ordinance for Minnehaha County. The hard surface driveway shall be at a minimum starting south of Jeffrey Street and extending 20 feet beyond the required fence. No loading or unloading shall take place in the right-of-way at any time. Operation hours shall be limited to 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday and 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Sunday, except work that takes place entirely within an enclosed structure. The operation shall allow unrestricted entry upon demand during regular business hours for inspection by the state of South Dakota, Minnehaha County, and local fire department officials. And the planning and zoning department reserves the right to enter and inspect the property at any time after proper notice to the owner or operator to ensure that the property is in full compliance with the conditional use permit conditions of approval in Minnehaha County zoning. Go through some pictures here. So this is from the north of the property from Jeffrey Street, and you can see that there is a fence there, but it's just a screen fence, so there's no visual barrier. This is looking down the driveway, and you can see the trees on the left there. That would be the west side, and it's pretty thick. Looking at the building and the machinery that's used. This is a view from down Jeffrey a little ways. This is looking at the property. This is the screen, the tree screening that has led us to say that the fence on this side is not required unless those trees are cut down, and then he has to build the fence.
Do you have a closer picture of that at all, Kevin? Because from this distance it looks well screened, but I can't tell from a close up.
I wonder if I can zoom in.
You can get closer and you still ain't going to see nothing through that fence. Rabbit could run through it.
It is pretty well screened, and that being said, this is also, as you can see, not all the leaves are on yet even.
Is that PowerPoint?
Yeah, this is
You should be able to tap on it, and then it should highlight. You should be able to, I think you might be able to, maybe not.
Maybe. Oh, here's a.
Yeah, there's like thick brush down low, isn't there?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And then, oh, I do have a little bit closer picture.
Okay.
And then this is from the south property line. This is actually the only view I could see it from the road from the south. The rest of it's either blocked by trees or buildings or hills. So, any questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
have you been out there and looked as far as the liquids and stuff coming out of the wrecked vehicles?
And I haven't seen any particular liquids coming out of wrecked vehicles. There was a couple of, this was a while ago that I recall this, that there was storage bins, storage containers that looked like they were holding liquids, and that may be oil or whatever, and that's not necessarily hazardous waste from the oil itself. So.
Okay. Just wondered if we'd been out there.
Any other questions for Kevin? Yes.
Wasn't Jeffrey Street the street that there was so many drainage problems
Oh,
on?
yeah. Right now.
Still is.
There still is.
Yeah, it's probably not was.
That's as bad as
And about right here where my dot is where the pavement ends at Jeffrey Street. So between the 480th Avenue and here, it is unpaved gravel.
Actually, one more over.
Okay.
So in the second
Right on my
edition of
property.
Brower edition, they have pavement. In the first edition, they have mud.
Yep.
And I think that is part of the reason why there's such the delay of people not paving it.
Well, the reason nobody wants to pave out there, you guys, is because for the simple reason you drive in on that road, you're tearing up your trucks. But yet you want me to spend $20,000 to pave something that I've already tore up my trucks with coming in because your roads are so rough. I'm buying shocks, I'm buying tires, I'm buying alignment jobs. You know, when you guys fix your road, there's not one piece of property out there that has blacktop.
Thank you, but let's have you come to the microphone here in just a second, and then because we got to, even though I could hear you really well, we got to catch it on the microphone, and so. Anything else for Kevin?
I think my question is if the road will be able to handle increased traffic.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
This won't be any increased traffic because they've been operating this for a couple of years.
We've been out there for 3 years.
Okay, so Kevin, thank you. Would the applicant come forward, state your name and address?
Thank you for the
Have at it.
clarification.
Scott Messick, 1806 East 29th Street, North Sioux Falls, South Dakota. The only piece of property on that whole development out there that has blacktop on it is if you go down, if you count 4 out down in, there's one contractor that has his blacktop. That's the only blacktop there, and his road is actually gravel, and you got roots this deep in that thing. I mean, why should I have to spend $20,000 to do my blacktop when I'm still driving through, costing me $20,000 every 6 months driving through that roots that you already got there that nobody wants to take care of? I mean, I'd be more than happy to haul crushed concrete in there and fill it in if I wouldn't get in trouble.
It's been a conundrum for quite a while.
You know, that's the only objection I have with the conditional use permit is you're going to make me blacktop it when I got to drive past all that other stuff in order to get to my own property.
The road right in front of your property is blacktopped, right?
Yes, it is.
So let me maybe try to explain, maybe not to your satisfaction.
I understand the reasoning why.
Okay, all right.
He's explained it to me, but it still makes no sense to me.
Not from a wear and tear on your vehicle.
Right.
Right. So let me ask this question, because I was the one that wanted this moved to the regular agenda. So you've obviously been aware of staff recommendations for a while, and one of them is this, opaque screening fence on the north and south property lines. What kind of fence are you anticipating to put up?
I was going to put up steel fence to match my neighbor across the way. He's got a driveway as wide as this thing is. It's all open, but mine's going to be totally fenced off.
So
And
I'm
what we're
not familiar
doing
with that. Is that like steel panels? Like
it'd be steel panels ran up and down with spaces so far apart so the wind could blow through it.
Oh, so is it like a chain link fence with the slats in it?
No. That chain link will stay there.
Yeah.
But there'll be 2x4s going across from each one of the posts.
Yeah.
You put in 3 of them, and then I'll put a panel here, a 4x6 or however how you
Almost
guys
like the steel
recommend.
panels you build a building with?
Exactly.
Do you remember the roofing contractor that we chased down? I took pictures of his fence, and he'll put up something similar.
Okay.
I mean, I have no problem putting it even on the north side, but I don't feel I should have to put it on the south side. My building's almost right on the south side of it.
My reason for wanting this to move, and I asked staff beforehand, and they said it was a no-no, but I'd like to have a stipulation that this be earth tone colors when the fence is erected.
That sounds good to me, because this is brown right across the road from mine. That's what I plan on matching.
Yeah. We have some occasions where people out of spite will just, I'll put up a fence and then it's polka dot or whatever.
See, we don't do no business out of there, so I mean, it ain't any extra traffic. We haven't, matter of fact, I haven't ran a load out of there since January 12th. The road's been so muddy out there, and the iron's down so low that, I mean, we don't even hardly even get out there ourselves anymore. Just because I don't want to wash my truck every time I want to drive down the road.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to this item?
I don't have nothing against this deal, but
please come forward.
Monty Muckle, 306 Inwood Drive, Hartford. I deliver mail out there.
Yeah.
Who's supposed to maintain those roads?
Well, if I may, Mr. Chair,
Please.
there's supposed to
Private?
There's supposed to be a road district out there where everyone chips in and pays for it.
And when is that going to come?
They claim to have already done it.
Have you been out there?
I have been out there many times.
Yeah.
I've been in better pastures, but smoother pastures
It's,
anyway.
If this road could be fixed, this would be a jewel for commercial development.
It absolutely would be.
Well, how come that was allowed to happen in the first place? That's what bothers me.
Well, it happened, Monty, back when they originally put that in there, it was a requirement that it had to be paved. Now, the reason the second part is paved is that became a requirement later on in the ordinance.
Oh.
But when they paved that, we could not require them to pave that first section. We tried to, but we couldn't do it. And so now, but it's like anything, with a cheap development comes cheap roads, and that's unfortunate. The reason people buy out there, the lots are cheap.
And there's lawsuits about the road district. Yeah.
So they just don't.
I just want to.
Because it is a good situation, and I don't want you getting stuck out there either, because I like my mail.
Yeah, I want my mail all the time.
So he's my mailman.
Thank you for that.
I'm real sorry I even brought it up.
Anyone else? Other than my nuisance little request to add a color,
Well, I know you do, because you're still concerned about the one on the interstate.
Yes, I
It's
am.
getting better.
Yeah.
It's fading.
Yeah, it's getting
all
rusty or
fading to the
something.
same color. I like it.
Mr. Chairman, while I do still have concerns about the liquids and stuff of these vehicles, I'll make a motion to approve it.
Tone colors?
Let's that be a gentleman's agreement.
It'll be tan.
Tone brownish
First tone.
colors. Yeah.
Yep.
And they're brownish.
And your liquids, there is no liquids. The liquid containers that he's talking about are my water tanks.
Okay.
For actual water, because I refuse to pay the $3,300 for the water company to.
Well, don't
give me
drizzle
a
it
lot.
down the interstate either. Let's keep it.
No, it won't look like that one.
Well, we've got a motion. Gentleman's agreement. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, and the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks for hanging around so long. Now we're on to the regular agenda, which is the comprehensive plan. I do want to have a new business item too, so I know I'm taking it really long.
Good evening again, David, Planning Department. This is a presentation for the Planning Commission adoption hearing for the Vision 2035 comprehensive plan. Just for your information, for those who may not know, the process started in 2012 and approximately 3 years. It gathered input from a task force that was made up of rural resident community, the agricultural workers, and other business owners in the county, and as well as an advisory board that was set up with the different department heads throughout the county and state departments in that realm. And throughout that process, we've continued to collect, just briefly, is collecting citizen input throughout that 3-year period through monthly task force meetings, as well as if Scott, can you? Put together a brief timeline on just the impact that it has. On the reverse side of that sheet just shows the number of ideas that have been generated throughout the process and in moving towards the future in terms of what those mean for updating the comprehensive plan with what we have now. Just skipping forward here and going briefly through. You've seen this slide many times. Planning gives you choices on how you want to live and what kind of environment that suits your place best and how you want to travel and different things like that. And this is just that timeline that I put together throughout the process, as I briefly mentioned before. It's indicated on that sheet, and having those 7 open houses over that span of time in 3 or 4 years, and generating those new ideas and engaging citizens in the process. With the adoption of a new comprehensive plan becomes another opportunity for engaging a new set of citizens, because there are more and more people that want to move out into the county, and balancing those interests between many different landowners. And this is a little word cloud that I put together based on every word that came out during the process with task force meetings and in those public meetings and open houses that we've had. Things that keep repeating themselves are growth management and managing the growth between some of the larger cities within the county, and helping to preserve that rural economy that that people want, that rural character and how we want to live our lives, and just moving forward with those concepts.
NIMBY didn't even show up on there. Not in my backyard.
I didn't put that one in there. No,
it probably would have been the money.
And these are some of the plan elements that have come throughout the process and are indicated throughout the draft document that's available online and in the auditor's office as well for review. And just some of the strengths, as I've repeatedly mentioned, is the agricultural economy and maintaining that strong entrepreneurial atmosphere and that tax climate that offers businesses an incentive to locate here is an economic development tool. And on the rural character and housing density side, is maintaining the right amount of density that helps preserve agricultural land for future generations and the future farming operations. And then finding that good balance between those different uses, whether those be confined animal feeding operations, certain businesses, manufacturing businesses, and the like in rural residents. And some of those challenges are managing that population growth that we're seeing, not just in the next 5 to 10 years, but 20, 30 years out during this planning period up to 2035. Land and water resources is another thing that is a big opportunity, is our availability of natural resources that are right under our feet. And with our water resources that we have, the Big Sioux River, is maintaining that, as well as maintaining a strong rural quality of life, and things like that. And mitigating the impact of economic growth while balancing the environmental stewardship and what we have presently, and supporting individual landowner rights in the process while doing that. Transportation, we're at the crossroads of 2 major interstates, which that's a primary economic development in terms of locating a business and finding those uses for those areas and accommodating for those. And some of the challenges through that is managing those access points so that you control the number of accesses that are onto highways, which have been set forth in most of the policies that have been recommended to the planning department. I won't touch on too much on the future land use because I've already pretty much went through that in terms of growth management and managing the different competing uses. And intergovernmental cooperation is reaching out and becoming more familiar with what every other entity in the state and the county, the cities, and reaching out to them and helping to build a better county. And just going through this real quick, population employment analysis is managing that urban rural population, the expanding and aging workforce, and the impact that that has on our highway and air transportation systems, specifically the ones that are private airfields that come before this conditional use permit requests. And as you can see, the diagram below indicates that more people are coming into the county and working here than are leaving the county, which in turn produces a pretty significant impact. I'll let Kevin talk about the existing land use analysis.
All right. So the existing land use analysis was done through looking at the land use points that were created through either going through our office or through the assessor's office. And then joining them with what the parcel is used for. And by looking at this, you can see very clearly that agricultural dominates the land use. And I did have these subdivided out in the plan, but here it's a little bit less. So it kind of highlights. The residential, you can see that there are a lot of residential lots, almost as much as agriculture, only 1,000 less. But the number of acres is significantly smaller, and it doesn't take a huge percentage compared to the amount of parcels that are actually out there. Let's see, the other parts that take up a lot of space was in incorporated areas, cities, and take up 11% of the total land area, so that the total planting gets down to 100%.
Kevin, those residential total number of parcels, that's outside of municipalities?
Yep.
So.
Yep. Oh, I don't have the map here, do I? Okay. And in the plan, there's the resident or the land use map that you'll see, and you can see that that's divided out into, say, agriculture, different sizes of agriculture, and residential lots, and that's
Just skipping forward, coming back to the growth management concept in a little bit more detail, in identifying that it's come out that we are an agriculturally dominant economy, and that's something that one is needed to maintain into the future, because we all need food, we all need gas to power our vehicles, and things like that. One of the other things to highlight is a community food study or local food study to identify what kinds of issues are hindering local food operators from producing the crop and marketing that directly to the consumer within the local area, and what kind of policies are set forth. Ag tourism is working with the state in terms of marketing and helping marketing what we have in the county. And certain things like revising standards, which more comes along the lines of the density zoning concept in terms of building eligibility transfers beyond the transition area. The 1 per 40 has worked fairly well throughout the process in managing those densities, but identifying locations may be a possibility in the future that you're identifying locations that are more suited for residential development rather than having multiple acreages spread out across the section.
So you're talking about actually moving them across the county if you wanted to? Yes.
More along the lines of transferring those development rights or building eligibilities. It's spelled out in more detail in the actual plan itself.
I think there's some wisdom in that, because you get all these built up, you're just going to have more and more conflicts with CAFOs. If you can decide you want to concentrate them, it would sure make a lot of sense. How many? I thought I saw in the plan here someplace the number of unbuilt residential lots.
It was like 9,000, or somewhere about that number of unbuilt.
Can you imagine 9,000 more residents out there and how packed this place would be? Unless
a lot of them are in the floodplain too, aren't they?
Some. I don't know of a lot. What?
They can't be built on a floodplain, but they exist on the floodplain.
Or near it, yeah. They want to be over viewing it, that type of thing.
They'd rather be by Garrettson or something instead of this Big Sioux Valley.
I think it's well, I think there's a lot of good stuff right in that. This local food study, you know what? They're growing people interested in buying locally sourced food. They've got a concern about the transportation and what it's doing to the environment. Ag tourism, you know, it's great because it grows an understanding of what's going on out in the country. So there's good stuff there.
And then the last one on there is actually, as an action step within the document itself in the growth management section, it goes to policies. It's reverse setback standards for dwellings from CAFOs, and considering that into the future. And what those distances are, if those are just criteria to go by. Skipping forward, and I'll let Kevin talk about the rural conservation section.
Again, the rural conservation slide here is basically the key highlights of the titles of what we are discussing in the whole chapter. Throughout the chapter, we look at the historic preservation, which is something to maintain in the county, something that is not just looking at historic signs out in the county, but also trying to find ways to maintain the historic building sites such as barns and even the old residential houses that are becoming out of favor and they're becoming torn down and replaced by new. So some of the different ways that we can look at preserving the historic character of the county. Natural character, looking at different ways of preserving different, say, wetland corridors or ways to help mitigate destruction of natural environment, to how we can promote the use of natural environment through, say, the greenways and trails, or even promoting the use of parks or expansion of park system. Farming in the community, that is addressed very heavily in the plan, and is based on how to promote farming type community where people move out in the country to be in the country, and then they essentially remove the country by moving there. Is the idea, and that really leads itself into the resident housing density, which really brings into the transfer into this section, the rural conservation. And this map shows the housing density, and you can see that there's almost a bullseye around Sioux Falls of where there's more residential units placed per section of land. The darker purple it is, or blue, means there's more residential, up to, I think it's 200 residential units in one square section of land. And somehow, if we can say, designate one area as prime agricultural zoning, and we can move those building eligibilities to another area where it may accept growth, where it may be better growth area, would be a good possible solution.
And skipping forward to the environmental stewardship section and coming back to our demand on natural resources supply that we have available to us, and what that impact has on certain habitats in the county, the rural area. County and state parks, in helping to identify certain best management practices that maybe we can utilize that would help mitigate some of those impacts that are seen on some of the prior things. Not too much on the conservation and federal lands, because those are mostly driven by federal mandates and things like that, and through that process. So water quality and stormwater management, really the next step is Minnehaha County was identified an area less than 100,000 people as meeting the Environmental Protection Agency's standards for municipal separate storm sewer systems, primarily in the areas outside, subdivisions outside Sioux Falls, in terms of meeting water quality and stormwater management standards, needing to address certain issues on things like illicit discharge into creeks, streams, and waterways. And moving forward and identifying things like vegetated filter strips, for example, as you can see in the image there. That's actually an image that was taken on the northeast side in Logan Highland Township, one of the streams up there, a heavily grassed area that helps slow down surface water runoff, and certain things like that. In developing a public education and outreach campaign to help improve our waterways in the county at the same time. In the transportation section, the significance of freight rail transportation on a regional and national system, and that impact and how that impacts commercial industrial uses that are proposed at certain rural service areas are identified in the future land use plan. The protected population growth, the impact on the roads and access management, and developing where those building eligibilities are placed and how those are developed in a way that we limit the amount of access onto state and county roads. And then road and bridge maintenance is another big issue that we're realizing. And then the other one is also recognizing the importance of the regional and nationwide movement and identifying connections to municipal trails and routes with multi-use pathways and wide shoulders. The governor set a standard and passed into law a new law's 6-foot passing distance for roads with 35-mile-an-hour posted speed limits, which is another issue that the State Department of Transportation is working on in developing a campaign centered around that. I skip forward here in identifying certain non-motorized transportation recreation routes, which is a key issue that the task force wanted us to present, and trying to work with the county highway department on what is a feasible option. As you can see, the purple is the existing routes, the one that goes to Brandon to Garrettson, the 8-foot shoulder that is a signed route there, and then 115, which has a pretty considerable shoulder for people to ride up to Del Rapids, and for other uses as well. And it helps benefit more than just walkers, bicyclists. Helps benefit
What's the dotted green line?
The dashed green line is future secondary routes, and the solid green line is proposed secondary routes that were identified by the highway department. And that's all I have to say on that.
So for the future land use plan, took into consideration 4 different types of areas that will be mapped. The agricultural production area, transition area, rural service areas, and development corridors. So this is a map to explain these. The agricultural production area is essentially everywhere that's not assigned. And then the transition area itself, this transition area boundary, on the other side of this would be agricultural production area. And that's going to be designated as primary area for agriculture to grow and expand and be supported. The transition area has been increased pretty substantially from our last comprehensive plan to grow outside of Sioux Falls, even around the small communities in Wall Lake, even Lyons, to allow for some expansion of residential type of uses or similar type of uses in those areas that may not be so, or other type of more localized agriculture, such as local food production, where they can utilize smaller parcels more efficiently than, say, large production ag. The rural service areas, or the rural service centers, are noted in these dots throughout the maps by different sizes. Some of them are well known already, some of them are pretty small, such as Buffalo. There is an existing commercial there, and we can maybe get a little more. But some of them are pretty big, which we can even expand more. based on the size of the dot would be kind of the proposed aerial extent, or roughly the area extent that we feel would be suitable for that area. We don't want, say, a 1 mile area of development around the Wild Water West corner here, the 17 and County Highway. But maybe developing a 40-acre section, because already has some commercial there, and by the time you get 2 more commercial lots, you're at 40 acres. So 40 acres of commercial land, for example, in the county it doesn't take much to get there. So that's why the dots seem fairly large. Then the development corridors are areas that have been deemed priorities for more planning in a sense, where we feel that more in-depth planning would allow for better utilization of the landscape to prevent strip-style development, to help make the area kind of beautification of the area for corridors going into and out of major cities in the area, so in the county.
And that wraps up the process. And just coming back to thanking each individual for their time throughout the entire process. And we want to continue to voice that or hear that input because it is valuable to develop a vision for the future. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns.
Mr. Chairman, this is a public hearing, so you need to make sure we ask the public, and then we'll note it, and then we'll need a motion.
All right. Is there anyone here that would like to comment on the plan?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just want to thank both Kevin, and David for coming to a township meeting and representing the task force and the people that were really a part of that whole thing. But actually you sat down we had a very small number of people there that night. Too bad, because our meetings now have been very heavily attended. But we will post it on our website that plan is available for people to see in hard copy. And it'll be available at all monthly meetings till the end of the year.
I think you guys just did a fantastic job. My hat's off to you, the staff, Kevin, Scott, and Bonnie. As a member of the committee, thank you for your effort. I mean, it's a very good document. It's a good vision. So
I think that's the thing that's unique is it's kind of special. We actually live in the dynamic part of the state that's growing and changing rather rapidly.
Mm-hmm. That's for sure.
And you've got to allow for those things. That's the fun part, which should make it fun for you guys putting that stuff together, because you see it all the time. When do we start working on the next one? 55. We're looking at 55.
2025.
We need to take action, I believe.
Yeah,
too,
take
right?
action. Then we'll. This is you're making a recommendation now that'll go to the county commission.
Right.
I move that the proposed Envision 2035 be accepted, and we recommend its adoption to the county commission.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second to recommend the adoption of this excellent plan. And all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Good work again.
Thanks.
Thank you. My new item can keep. So never mind.
Oh, we have scheduled. I'll send out another reminder, June 11th. I know I sent out and I got a response. I think almost all of you can make it. Doug can't because he's preparing for an open house. But
and I'm gone for work.
yeah, and Becky's
What's
gone.
the date again?
June 11th.
11th. That's a Thursday, and it's
At Strawbell Winery. And Don's going to host us. I think he's going to have some special seating for us. So I'll let him know. If anything changes, let me know. And we'll just be at that meeting.
Yeah, do you need a head count? I mean, like a head count? I think my wife's planning on coming. Her spouses were supposed to.
Anyone's invited. Bring some friends if you want.
If you have any.